everybody, to this evening's meeting of the Local Development Framework Subcommittee, 17th of November. We will start with the evacuation procedure. For those that know, we will, if there's no fire drill planned, so if there is a drill, it's a real one. So we have two exits, either the one behind there or where you came in the main chamber. We form up on the car park. Please wait until you're actually dismissed. Don't just disappear, decide to go down the chip shop or anything like that, because people will think you're still in the building and come looking for you.
Obviously, you got over that one.
Over that one, yeah. Like I say, we're not expected. Apologies for absences and members away on official business. As I say, oh my! I don't think anyone told you was on it for a while, did they?
Yeah, I think that's what it was actually.
we did wonder, so we asked the question. So the only one on the list is Councillor Hayfield, and I've not seen anything. So we will.
Well, just remember, Councillor Hayfield asked me if I was due his apologies.
Did he? Okay then. We'll take those then. Are there any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests on anything on tonight's agenda? Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Judge. I just, because I spout it so often, I just think I could just mention that I am a Dorking Parish Councillor as well, in relation to the neighbourhood plan and everything. I think for transparency purposes, it's best that I do. Thank you. Very non-pecuniary.
Thank you. Yeah, but I don't think that's
It doesn't.
falls you anything on the agenda. Yes, Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, same polls with the parish council, but as you've said, it should be fine.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of July and the 9th of September. Is here. Everybody had an opportunity to look at those. Anyone any comments on those agendas? So I'm okay to accept them as an accurate record. Have a proposal, please. Councillor Ridley, second that. Councillor Phillips. I mean, that is. All those in favour? Harry, I will sign those in due course. Moving straight onto the agenda, we move on to agenda item 5, which is the Settlement Sustainability Assessment Report. Doc.
Hi, we've got the update of the settlement appraisal before you. It actually updates, we've been producing it now since 2010, and it supports LP2 of the local plan. We did send all the information out to all of the parish councils, and where we did get the information back, we have updated it. But I know that there might be just one or two things that need to be updated. But if anybody does have any updates, then we're more than willing to update the information. As you'll see though, although how we've done the calculations this year in the counting, the actual place of where the settlements come within the settlement hierarchy hasn't altered. We've still got places like Shuttington that are slightly different, and that hasn't changed for a number of years. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. Before I bring in some questions, I think one thing that might be useful of this, because I think I've had a number of comments this evening, is if we could just double check with local members rather than just the parish council about some of that sustainability scoring. So I know I've had a number of comments that from different members from different parishes going, really? Where does that number come from? So I think certainly I'd like to suggest that this goes out. I mean, because I know it goes out to all members, but to be fair, almost just saying, can you double check your area and make sure it's accurate to give us an accurate thing? Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And it's my comments about the accuracy of the score. And again, for a start, I don't think it's a reflection of anybody making a mistake. You don't live in the village, you don't see what I see. And it's around the buses score for Woodend, Hurley and Piccadilly. Woodend has been given a score of 10 and Piccadilly has been given a score of 5. I'm pretty sure some of the buses, again, it's no no reflection, I've just checked the website, they don't seem to all line up as well. Some of the buses supposedly that run through Hurley or Woodend should run through Piccadilly and then go on to Kingsbury. And I know that we have a category for intermittent buses that run 1 day or 2 days. I would like to say, just bluntly, the Star buses, whatever, they don't run. They supposedly run, but they don't run at all. And I think it's really important, and again, it's no reflection on anybody here. If you go to a company and say you provide us with the service, of course, they're going to say yes. I can tell you categorically they aren't, but obviously the data is only what we have to hand. And I think it's not right that we are generating a score that says that Woodend, Hurley, and Piccadilly have business links to Kingsbury and onward to Tamworth. We end up putting people in these villages and they won't be, which there isn't at the moment, a bus service to facilitate them. I already have residents that have been dropped there by social services and some of the new builds, and the first thing they say is, I can't get a job because there's no buses. Again, it's not a reflection against these schools here. No one knows what's going on in my village, but the bus service is horrendous and it does not reflect that.
Thank you. And I think that just reflects that the comment I made. I think I think we've all looked through different bits, and that just kind of really highlights the fact that the quality of the data in here, particularly around buses, it would seem is a bit of an issue, but for other ones as well, it's a problem. Right. So Councillor Simpson, Councillor Dervix, and then Councillor Ridley.
Thanks, Chairman. Initially, General, I absolutely agree with that, because I think there is a lot of stuff in here that local members will understand, may snigger at. The idea that McDonald's at Bassett's Pole is an advantage to the village, I don't think is eccentric. I'm also not sure that Bassett's Pole actually counts as a settlement. Last time I looked, it was actually part of Middleton. So I'm not sure why it's there. When some other pretty well-known, well-established settlements are not in here. There's at least two villages in my ward that don't seem to count. And I'd really like to know why.
So do you want to come back to that point, and then I'll bring Councillor Dervix and then Councillor Ridley?
And I didn't check over it. I don't know. Astley and Packington. We know Packington exists because somebody's proposing a new policy in the plan. We know Astley exists because we have a polling station.
Dorothy, do you want to come back on?
I can say is that we'll check that and find out the reason why. I honestly don't know, as we said here today. I'll find out. But we're happy to send it on to local members and we'll circulate it to everybody and go for any changes that need to be and to put into it.
And you say, I think we should take local members and just reiterate and say, look, it's important that you, because they've all had the, but let's be honest, some probably wouldn't have read it in the level of detail we would. So I think it's worth just reiterate, say, check your local areas. So if we could say, make sure they're all there, the villages and settlements, make sure they're all there. And actually, can you make sure the accuracy of the information based on the scoring criteria is correct? Yeah.
Thank you. Just take the words out of my mouth. It's very obvious already that there are lots of little details. If this has been going on for years, things change during that time, and we need up-to-date information, and that can only come from members if parish councils haven't responded. So I don't know whether it needs seconding. I would second that as a revelation point from this meeting, so that we can get, when it's published, we can get those details right. I've stuff to give you in and with them. I'm not going to go into them. I think that's a waste of time here.
Okay, thank you. So Ridley.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Dervix. It's no good going to this. There are some inaccuracies in the Dordon one, but it's not what we're missing. It's what we've been given. We've been given the Grindon Recreation Ground in Boot Hill. Very nice, thank you. Didn't know we were changing parishes, but there we are. And also we've been given Birchwood Preschool, which is actually in Polesworth, but Birchwood's also been counted on the Polesworth figures. So I will I will add all this down, Dot, and sort of go through the inaccuracies. I don't recall seeing it coming through to parish, but it could be that there's been a communication issue with the clerk changing over and whatnot, so it's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor. Is it councillor Holland?
Thanks, Joe. It's just a quick one that, obviously the point scores have changed from a GP surgery used to be 3 points out of 10. So the numbers do look quite good. Some of the points on there, like a bank or building society, I mean, most banks and building societies are not even open anymore. But the point that Councillor Dervix was raising was that even some of these bus routes are not within walking distance. So Hartshill and Anstey Common have been clubbed together. They're not accessible to one another, if that makes sense. And they don't directly, the bus safe wouldn't go through Hartshill to Anstey Common. So they're just a bit, I think everyone's got their own, will know like their ward specifics, but they're just a little bit, it's just a little bit frustrating, isn't it? That's it. It's just a statement more than a question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, similarly, like everybody else has said, I've just had a quick look through and there's some inaccuracies and double count and then two things, but you can sort all that out. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? I'm conscious the recommendation talks about noting the report. I think we're happy to note it, but I would like those recommendations that we've already put included, i.e. that it goes out to the local member, the specific note asking them to check those areas of is everything there and is it correct, so that we work on the right information. I'll propose that from the chair. Can I have a second? Councillor Simpson, all those you talk. Bob, did you want to come back, Bob?
Sorry, can I just ask if it would be possible if we could put it onto the website for the background information as a draft? It's not the final version, but if we could put it onto the website as a draft version so that it supports the plan, but we can make it very clear that there are some updates to be done to it.
I think we need to be really clear. My worry with doing that is actually could cause more questions than answers, and actually people could go, well, you can't even get your own borough right information in your own borough. So probably my view would be if we could hold off until we got the clarity and more accurate. I'm not sure a more accurate version went on the website.
I'd say that, Chair. I think also if we're going to hold the bus companies to account, I don't like the idea of publicising their running services. They are single potential or not.
Yeah, okay.
I think if we're going to do that, we need to put a fairly short time limit in as well. I expect authority to get this through in a timely manner if we don't give her the support that she needs.
Absolutely. I think between a rock and a hard place, we have to publish these things. But I think so if we could get the note out quickly with urgent or something like that, flashing lights that lets members know that, and if you've all got different WhatsApp groups, and if you just let your fellow councillors know this is coming, and it's really important that they actually make it accurate.
You could ask that the group leaders make it clear to their groups as well.
Absolutely, yeah, we can do that. So I'll hold fire for now, Doc, and put them on until we've got the information back. Okay, right, so I propose I can. Oh, sorry.
Have a slight more question to make it easy, that we could add on item 3 or whatever it was, that it can be published on the website when those responses are received. So it doesn't need to come back to us beforehand. So as soon as those updates are in, then I think it can go.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, but I think it puts the onus on people to respond, to make sure that they've responded. So yeah, I'm happy with that timeline. How long do people need, do you think? I mean, bear in mind we've got a number of people checking their own relatively smaller amount of information, so they should be able to do it relatively quickly. Where we were Monday today.
Would Friday the 28th be if it's possible?
More than it's more than enough time. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. I propose that. I had a seconder from Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Switch it up again. Next item on the agenda which is agenda item. Agenda item. Yeah. And that is. That is an authorised local plan review, which is the regulation 18 issues and options paper. Sorry.
Okay, this is the issues and options, and it's the first stage of producing, well, the second stage of producing the local plan. As you'll remember, at the 1st of July meeting, we went through all of the policies and tried to highlight where we felt that there were changes that were required. This actually develops on that and explains more about what the issues are, what the possible options are. It's not the final local plan, so it gives the opportunity for expression of interest, expressions of how people feel about the plan. And as you will also see under LP1, we've got 6 growth options as well that give you a flavour of where potentially development could take place. In terms of and at the end of the issues and options, there's a section on new policy areas as well. In terms, if members agree the document, the aim is that it would start consultation tomorrow, and the website would go live. We're hoping it would be first thing in the morning or as close as we possibly can. And this paper would be available on there. There would also then be letters and emails going out, as well as there'll be an online response form. At the moment, because of how thick the local plan is and the number of questions, it will actually be 2 forms. So, but you can jump from section to section. You don't need to answer it all. As well as there'll also be a call for the call for sites information will just be published as part of the background information. That's as far as that goes. It's just all the information of all the sites that have been put forward. In terms of the events and drop-in sessions, there's a range that we are organising, and they would start from next Monday for just over a week and a bit, and then there'd be more in early January, with the closing date of the 14th of January, which is slightly longer than the statutory period. The statutory period is only 6 weeks, but with Christmas we have added on a little bit extra time. In terms of the events, if agreed tonight, then we can circulate that to all members tomorrow, and that will also go on our website as well as the social media as well. And when I send it out, I'd be very grateful if members could then circulate it again within their local community as well. In addition, we're also doing a talk to the parish and town councils on Wednesday evening at their monthly meeting, and then I've got arranged with some online meetings with parish councils. We've got 2 before Christmas, and then there's a mop-up session in the new year, just in case anybody has any other questions that they need answering before the closing date. We're happy to do anything else in addition to that, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Dot. Before I ask it, I was actually going to make a suggestion, and before people grow, I was actually going to suggest we go through it policy at a time, just to actually look at each of the comments on each policy. Because I think it's important, because there are so many, what I don't want to do is skip over and just go, oh yeah, with no change, like that. I think it'd be useful to understand what's being proposed to our residents and what they're being asked. So, for example, on LP1, we're talking about what the growth options are. And I think we need to be really clear around infrastructure and things like that as well on those sort of things. But before we do that, has anybody got any comments or questions that they'd like to make? That's really?
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of work being done here, so, but there's one thing I noticed on table 6, which is the update on the housing allocations. On H4, we've got shown 31 homes completed. Well, that was the Owl homes, at the bottom of Common Lane. But that was passed before the local plan was passed in September 21. So this didn't actually form part of the allocation of H4 that came prior to the authorisation or the adoption of the local plan. So I wonder if we could take that out, because actually, in actual fact, no homes have been completed on H4 to date. Would that be okay, Doc? Thank you, Chair.
I think, yeah, can you explain the logic of that? Because as I understand it, actually having some of these in helps us with our number. Because we have a criteria, so, but yeah, if you could explain, please, the logic.
Yeah, the logic of including it was merely because within figure 1 of the local plan, on page 92 of the local plan, the Owl housing site was actually within the allocation at the time of the local plan. So that's the reason why it was then counted as the 31 completions. In terms of the next stage of the local plan, in terms of producing the regulation 19, yeah, we can alter the H4 boundary to exclude that, but the 31 homes have already been counted within the completions. Because they've already been completions, when we do our housing figures, they will already be in there. So, and it just takes it off of that, but we can happily alter that by the time we get to the regulation 19.
Okay, so if we're going to take it out of the regulation 19, why would we leave it in the reg 18? What, I accept they've already been built.
Because this is purely an update of what it says within the adopted local plan. So it would be wrong to alter what is in the regulation 18, because that merely reflects what's in the adopted plan. So the table that you have there is an update of all of the allocations. And because it was never taken out of the adopted local plan boundary, it would be wrong to take it out at this stage, but we can happily take it out at regulation 19 when we actually draw the boundaries of sites and show where allocations are going to be.
Okay, but can I just clarify, Councillor Ridley, but I thought Councillor Ridley said it wasn't in the original plan.
I have figure 1 in front of me and it is in there. So it is in the boundary. And I understand that there might have been a difference, but it's probably something that we hadn't picked up when we actually produced the allocation of the final plan. But the plan that is in there, in the adopted plan, includes that site.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ridley, do you want to come back?
Sorry, it's probably the semantics, so thank you for explaining, Doc. But effectively, in his MM99, the inspector said before planning permission is granted for the development on the site, a master plan framework and design guide for the whole of the site, will be prepared by the landowners in conjunction with and approved by the Borough Council. So are we saying then that 31 houses have come in and they're not part of the master plan, or they are part of the master plan?
No.
So you can't, do you know what I mean? You can't have it either way. Are we saying that the 31 houses are part of H4 and therefore it would be part of the master plan, but there was never a master plan? So what I'm saying is, surely we weren't building on H4 without the master plan and without the authority of the planning inspector and his decision making.
Thank you. Doc, did you want to come back on?
Just that when the planning applications would have come in, it would have been in the period, and I would have to check the timeline, but it would have been in that period between the submission of the plan and when we finally adopted the plan, that I think that felt permission. So the policy in itself would have been correct at one moment in time, but you're absolutely right. It shouldn't now include that 31 dwellings.
Great. Is that? That's the question. Kind of. Right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? So I'd like to go through, so everyone talks about sustainable development. There are a number of growth options in there. So I understand that this is basically what will go out to residents. They'll read this and they'll go, and then they'll be asked a question, do you agree with this option? If so, why? Should we all say if you don't agree with this option, if so, why? Or if by, yeah, I'm just wondering, we've got it. I know by default, if you kind of say I don't agree with the option, then it almost kind of defines that. But I'm just thinking about the question, and it goes for this all of the same growth options. Do you agree with this, and if so, why? There are any comments on that?
Not on that, but a shed load on the rest of it.
Okay, well, let's go through them. Let's go through a bit at a time. Okay, so that's the growth options, and as we said to you on Friday, you know, one of the things I understand the growth options. My concern is we need to be really clear on infrastructure. You know, I'm not talking about just roads. I'm talking about other infrastructure as well, because we had a plan that was adopted and worked based on A5. That's now not coming forward. So what difference? What changes that made? We know we've got lots of call for sites around the road infrastructure or the road structure, but that's already at breaking point. At what point do we say, you know, or are we able to go, okay, we'll adopt that, but it has to be based on investment in infrastructure? Mike, did you want to come back on Doc? Do you want to come back on that? And then I'll bring Councillor Ridley.
Yes, LP1 itself and also the MPPF looks to infrastructure, and in that book, Rural Disclaimed. I think what we focused on here in a lot of the growth options is because of the transport issues, and that's the driving force as to why we're being forced into particular or could end up doing things that are out of where the comfort zone was in terms of the adopted local plan. The policy for LP1 does talk about and focuses on infrastructure, and when we come to that regulation 19, that will be a key part of that, and that part of it. But what we're asking here in particular is, where is that growth going to be due to the transport issues? And it is mainly that is driving those questions. But I can see the issue in terms of, do you agree that there isn't a one that says, do you not agree? So we can have that in if that was felt.
I think it makes it much easier if you're doing accounts, how many people agree, you know, and then how many people disagree with that option. Just makes it a nice simple count, yay or nay. We get all the feedback behind that. Otherwise, feels to me we've only got one side of the story. Yes, I agree. Well, does that by definition mean that anyone who didn't answer that disagrees? Or perhaps I'm reading too much into.
I think it's very sensible.
We do that.
I get what you're saying.
Right.
You don't want it to be a default disagreement, do you? That's that.
I know you can ask, do you agree first?
No, that's what I mean. But you don't want a non-agreement to be a default disagreement.
Yeah,
I know,
that's
but
right. Yeah, so
I do get. I understand that.
Okay, cool. And then the other options talk about transport. I mean, interesting because I know we don't have particularly great transport in North Warrington. But and then the other one talks about development, dispersed developments throughout the borough, and the last one talks about a new settlement or village proposal. Councillor Humphries.
I'm a bit concerned about that, like Fort Constantine, for example. Are we in touch with whichever, I'm not even sure, because I'm not sure that's Lichfield at that stage, or and just up the road it's Leicestershire. So have we done any discussion with them? Because this new village that's been proposed in Fort Constantine, about a third of it is in our area, and Hugh Lullington. Actually, I had a drink with him the other day. He never even mentioned it, you know that. But he let me buy him a drink. But I'm just, the point I'm saying is, and it may not be him doing it as the overall landlord. He's got land agents and all sorts of stuff like that. But how much are we talking to somebody about a new village of 1,000 houses or more in the middle of nowhere? Because he's talking about down the B4 589, isn't it, which is the Ashby to Tamworth Road. No bus services whatsoever. It is 3 miles in each direction before you can, 3.5 miles in each direction before you can get anywhere. How much discussion have we had in terms of joined up thinking where that's concerned? Thank you.
Thank, I'll just bring, councillor Simpson in. But we have a number of settlements that are on our back borders, you know, the A38 Langsu, we have a number of these that are literally on our borders that will by default have an impact on us because, you know, communities don't respect political boundaries and they will cross them and use them, etc. So I think we do have it's a useful question. I'm going to bring councillor Simpson in because he had his hand
Well, can I just say, I want to be parochial like you. It's over the road from where I live, so I'm very, very interested.
up. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Chairman. I've got a range of comments of all these. I'll just say, it says in the papers, if we look at New Village, it's not 1,000 houses, it's 4,000 to 5,000 houses. Not an insignificant proposal. I've got to say, pretty surprised that this is the first I've heard of this. And I would have hoped we would have a bit earlier consultation so that members can talk about actually as a principle, what do we think and where we're going? Because, you know, the proposal is, you know, do you think the Borough Council should deliver a new partnership, a new settlement partnership with Lichfield District Council? It's like that's cart before the horse. Now I have a bunch of detailed comments. In here, we refer a number of times to the World Franchise Review. I think that's gone on now, and actually there isn't going to be a review of the World franchises, so I think we just need to tweak the phrasing. Not to talk about how they're going to review the franchise, because we know they're not. I was slightly concerned in page 10 and 6.10 that it seems implicit in there that the costs of the business, the benefit cost review, the spending on the A5 is limited to the strategic benefits of North Warwickshire. It says, making it unlikely that growth from just North Warwickshire will provide sufficient funding or benefit cost ratio to make all of the improvements to any of the main transport routes. You know, I think we just need to tidy that up because I don't think anybody implied it would ever just be our benefit.
I'm sorry, Councillor Simpson, where about, you said 610?
It's on page 10.
Okay.
In section 6.10 of the draft, and it's the third comms comment. In terms of the public, one of the options talks about looking at development along public transport corridors. I'm perfectly relaxed about that. But I'm not relaxed about the reference to junctions. I think we can talk about, you know, can we develop along the main roads? But I really don't want to start emphasising the point about motorway or other junctions because that's going to lead us into a whole different conversation about whether we want to focus on transport corridors, because I think we might. But I really don't think we would wish to focus on junctions. That I think is a word too far that we really don't need to say. There's an element that's talking about the A446. I would really beef up the comms section, because if we think the A5 needs infrastructure, my word, nobody's even started thinking about the A446. So if we start getting to a consideration of development that involves stuff along the A446, even we've just been through all the work that HS2 are doing, even for them, the biggest infrastructure program on the planet, almost, by virtue of its cost, they didn't think there was enough benefit to look at changing the Jekyll, Watton, Bends and anything around there. So, you know, we're not, I think we're a bit understating the negatives potentially of doing that, because that, I just do not see any development bringing forward improvements to the A446 in that respect. On page 11, the public transport centres corridor, I get option 1. Yes, it was option 2 that said focus on road corridors and junctions. Road corridors I'm happy with, junctions are not. Option 1 quite rightly refers to Atherstone and Poleswood Station. Option 3 really, given that we're talking about the borough as a whole, should include the other stations, not just Atherstone and Coleshill. You know, Waterloo and Coleshill need to be included in that, because option 3 is borough wide, not A5 wide.
Sorry, option 3 to me, it does include Coleshill and Waterloo.
It does in 6.10. It
Yeah.
does not in prose further down.
Right, okay, thank you.
I think that this new settlement thing is the bit that really concerns me beyond anything. The rest of the detail, the thing on consideration about whether a new settlement, I think that's a principle that we should have considered before we start consulting that. And I really am quite aware of that, where we're going with it. You know, I just don't know if that's something I mean, you know, to an extent we're going to have to, but there are other potential sites for new settlements that I'd like us to think about, as opposed to saying, look, we've got a principal one here, another one a bit further down, but there are other potential sites. If we're going in options and issues appraisal, and we are only identifying Thorpe Constantine and something near Austrey, what about the other potential sites? It feels like we really are putting the cart before the horse. And you know, it doesn't just implicate the issues for Lichfield; it, you know, implicates issues for the rest of us. And I think there's a reference in. So I'm thinking more about the supplement plan again, but I think those are my concerns on LP1.
Thank you. And I think that's kind of what I was alluding to when I talk about infrastructure. It does worry me that we're putting the burden on these infrastructures, and particularly when you're talking about major junctions, because one of the big concerns I have is actually they're not in our control, because Highways England, we know, are notoriously difficult to kind of get anything done and anything moved at any sort of pace. And the 446 is a really good shout out, because the 446 by default becomes the diversion route for anything on the M42. Anything happens on the M42 and the A446, you know, from the bottom of Coleshill all the way up to Bassett's Pole becomes absolutely rammed. So I think that if we could just look at those points as well. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I agree with most of what's been said by Councillor Simpson, but I think any reference to the A5 or the A446 must include information about them not being just North Warwickshire transport route. They are strategic, and it's not realistic to think that Warwickshire can bear the cost from within. I think we need to really make that clear. We need investment in those transport routes, because it's the transport that is coming through North Warwickshire that we need to keep moving so that we can unlock the areas around those. If we don't manage to do that, we will in the end drown to a hole. You know, it's going to happen little bit by little bit until we are still. And I think any of these plans, when we're putting it on in black and white, we need to put it in there so that we can use that in the future. Perhaps not us, but it can be used to try and push for further investment.
Absolutely, I agree. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, and what I'm about to say is absolutely no reflection on anything work that's been done. This is just an observation, because it's my first time through this, and no criticism of any of the officers. I'm going to say it is ludicrous, really, how we sort of go about this as a society. So I'm going to say it that way, so it's not that we use no computer modelling, no idea of our traffic flows for the next couple of years, what's coming from Neaton that flows through to Lichfield. we would just do it by feel, by idea, by and again, it's no reflection on the officers. This is the site to look at. This is insane, really, a little bit that we are planning out the next 5 years or 10 years of how this the county's going to shape up, and we don't have any spreadsheets in front of us saying this is giving traffic flows. And I say just a comment against, and we're doing the best we can, but the idea that we're planning that sort of people are going to invest in roads and development that are completely outside of our control. We all know that they're going to wallop houses up on cramped roads and everything, and then it's the nature of the beast. And I think really we should be, as I say, completely understand where we're coming from. I think what we are obligated to do with our officers is try and get the best shake for our residents. And I think some of this is, it's very hard to get your head around, and it's strange that as a society, this is how we've decided to plan our infrastructure in our country. It makes you wonder why we got some of the messes we've got into. So I'll leave to that. It's no reflection on the officers here. It's just the way it is. It's bonkers, actually.
Yeah. But I think the point I would make, this is the whole point, and actually the debate's really good, because this is the point of an issues and options paper. It's about looking at the options that we have in front of us and looking at the issues that they cause, and then as an authority, what are we happy to accept? What are we willing to accept? What do we think we need to accept? So actually, in a way, the debate, I think, is really useful. Councillor Ridley and then Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is bonkers, and it's so frustrating. That's the thing. I think the more you work at it, the more respect you have for the planners, because it's actually they've got their backs against the wall. It's really difficult. But I think Dot has summed it up here. For me, about the A5, you could also read the A446 because of the fact that it is so strategic in relation to when things snarl up, when you've got your A42 and you've got all the other pressures that are on it, employment and housing and big cities. Asking developers for funding for the improvements to the A5 could impact upon the ability to provide other necessary infrastructure for the site, schools, health facilities, etc. So there is no way that we can ask developers to contribute to those improvements, because I think Councillor Simpson always sort of says succinctly, we have to consume our own smoke, which I think is fair game. So for me, that is a critical matter, that our infrastructure with regards to the road funding, people can't actually look at getting developers to pay for that, for those critical things that are required.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, as we've all alluded to, the officers have got the task of making a square peg fit into a round hole and make it go smoothly. The fact is that, as people and members have pointed out, the transport corridors are not just for the estates that are going to be built, it's the people commuting through those corridors to get to other places as well, which leads to the snarl-ups on the road networks. That's already happening now without these houses being delivered. Then we move on to schools and education. I know the school at Polesworth, that's nearly 300 pupils oversubscribed already. I don't see any provision of senior school being put into the plan, or I know that wouldn't be us anyway, but that's one of the things, the mitigating things that would need to go in with the amount of houses we're talking about. And North Warwickshire is quite a rural mining communities. The roads leading off the main arterial routes are usually sort of more rural roads that don't take that volume of traffic. Polesworth and Dordon especially, you know, we've got 3 canal bridges through Polesworth that only will allow certain volume of traffic over and width of lorries. When you go up to Dordon, their route onto the A5, because they're old mining houses, they've got no parking on the side, so the residents have got no choice but to park on the road, which causes massive issues as it is now. So it's all these things put together where it really is going to be a challenge for us to adopt these extra houses. So I think the better we can try and get ahead of all this and get as many things mentioned as possible that the developers can be aware of, the better really. I know I've had residents contact me about when new estates have gone up and the water pressure's been affected. So that's another thing in the network that we need to look at, where the water pressure has considerably dropped. So there's quite a raft of things that I think we're all going to have to look at when these developments are going to be delivered. And that's without the ones that members have already mentioned that are on our borders, but will still have the same impact as the ones really that are going to be built in North Warwickshire.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphries.
You've already alluded to it about other stuff that's going to be built on our borders. And it's just come to me while you're talking, it says thousands going to go up for Constantine, which is Lichfield, northwest Leicestershire on the A444, just outside Osprey, going towards Norton Juxta Twycross. I've got to put 7,000 houses there potentially. I mean, that changed the whole concept of everything that's up there. I know it, but we've got to consume our own smoke. Dot and Mike can only look at what goes in here. Is there any way we can get any indication of what's going to happen around the borders so that members do know how it will affect different communities?
I'll let Dot come back on that because yes, is I believe the answer.
Yes, yes, it is something that we're looking at because the duty to cooperate is a key part of the local plan process, and we've already met, as you can see, we've met with Lichfield. They are looking at a new potential settlement, so that's the reason why we need to see if we should be looking at it as well. But it's only a potential option, and that's the same as far as I know with Hinkley and Bosworth. It's within their regulation 18 as a potential option for discussion and debate, and that's the whole point of these is that there are probably a lot of options here that are just no-goes or ones that will be tweaked, but there may be ones that we do need to think about. But that's the reason why this is an important stage of the local plan process, is to try and tease out all of those considerations and discussions. It isn't supposed to be, well, this is the only option that we particularly like at this moment in time, because then we would be told that we're too far narrow in how we're looking at things. And so the whole point of this is unfortunately to look at really difficult issues and think about, well, what are the implications of it? And at the end of the day, the next stage of the local plan is within your hands as to where we go with that. But at least then there will be those debates that will have taken place, and that discussion will be out in the open, and you can see where you want to go from there. In terms of the traffic modelling and things like that, that will be, once we know roughly where some of the sites are that you particularly are keen to pursue, then that is when we will fully engage with the strategic transport assessment, and that looks at all the modelling and implications and any road improvements that would be needed as a consequence of that. I know that that's very high level towards the local plan, and it's often then not when a planning application's actually considered that all the detailed stuff comes out. But we will try to get to the bones of that as we possibly can, and hopefully with your involvement, we can get to that stage as quick as we can.
Okay, thanks, Dorothy.
Can I just add to that, Chair? That's a big open statement, as quick as we can. It's not, I feel sorry for it, because it's like Chinese sticks, throw them up in there, and there's a big pile ends up, and then you try and pick the bits out that can sort yourself. Is there a point where all of these authorities, and I'm talking about, I'm only worried about the 3 in my area, that all border on our area, but is there a time where it all comes to an end, and when it throws up in there, it lands, and that's what we've got, and we know what's happened? Thank you.
But unfortunately, planning just doesn't stop. Even with, we can say one day we've adopted a plan, the next day it could be out of date. Planning is a revolving door, and it just keeps going, unfortunately. So I can tell you that we can work towards an adopted plan, and that will be a solution for that moment in time. But within 5 years, you've got to review your plan again. And that is just means that it is an ongoing process, I would say.
Mike, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, it's more to reaffirm what the issues and options is, because I'm concerned that there's an element of prejudging or, prejudging and predetermining. That's very important in planning. We may not like some of the options, and we have potentially no intention of carrying those options forward because we're more than aware of the issues. However, even though I'm aware of the issues, I still have to consider that option, which is why it's in this document. If we do not include this broad range of options, then the local plan process and the local plan Reg 19 can be challenged. So if we don't include any reference to Thorpe Constantine could potentially challenge it. So why haven't we considered the option of a new village? We may not like it, and we may not have no intention to go there. But if we don't consider it, then the plan is on shaky grounds. The same applies to the call for sites. When we look at the call for sites, we have a range of call for sites. You have the existing allocations and the range. Now, if we predetermine that we're not going to consider any of those sites, we have to have either very concrete grounds or we could potentially be challenged. They're called reasonable alternatives. And we're advised by MHCLG and all the other agencies and consultants that if we don't do this, then the local plan can be on shaky grounds. It doesn't mean we're going to commit to them. It just means that we've looked at them, and for the very points you've all raised tonight, you're going to dismiss them and you're going to discount them. And the final point is on the new settlements, again, particularly with that option, because that's one inevitably going to cause the most issues. There are other issues on it that relate to the delivery. So that's an option, but quite frankly, the delivery is absolutely difficult. But in terms of other adjoining authorities, just so that you're aware, yes, there's Norton Heath in Leicester and in Hinckley and Bosworth, North West Leicestershire. There's Thorpe Constantine. There is Fenny Drayton in Hinckley and Bosworth as well. That's 5,000 houses. There are 3 additional settlements being looked at in Solihull, at Knoll, Balsall Common, and I've forgotten the other one, but basically existing settlements. So we are bracketed by them. But if we ignore that option within ourselves, then that does raise concerns. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to go for it, but it has to be, at least we've looked at it. And that's simply all we are doing at this stage. We're simply looking at it. We can then raise the issues, and you can show from the level of opposition that you will get through the option consultation. You will get to a point that you can then determine which of those options or hybrids or whatever you would prefer to go to, having taken that into account.
Thanks for that, Mike. And be aware, we're not prejudging, predetermining any of this, but we live with some of these things. So the moment you say something, whether you intend doing it or not, if it affects one of the wards and that the local member will get an earful of grief and all that. So they have to be armed and ready. But I fully appreciate and understand. Actually, we'll consider them. We'll look at them. And the point I was going to make is actually some of this stuff's not in our control. You know, we can't determine what other planning authorities are going to do. They may well be right on our border. We may not like it, but we don't necessarily have a choice. Right. I've got Owen Phillips, then Hayden Phillips, and then I've got Mark Simpson and Dave Humphries.
As Dorothy says, we're all a part of Sisyphus's gang now. I think, as has been outlined, it's just a consultation, isn't it? This isn't predetermined. I'm happy to move the motion to help speed up debate.
We were going to go through each policy. I was going to say we're doing well because we've done one. We've got 52 to go.
Yes, I was thinking it's just not. I'm not saying it's perfunctory in a dismissive way, but if it's just data gathering and a discussion piece for the public, and we have to propose ideas that we are not going to like to potentially dial down or inflate later. We need to get that feedback anyway, whether we debate all 50 or we don't.
Yeah, we made all 50. I think it'd be worth, there'll be some in here though that I think we should look at, because there'll be some that people definitely want to say yes is in or no's up.
Whatever you want, bacon butties.
Yeah, order breakfast, don't worry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question. I understand the policy. I understand the process. I've been through it enough times and sort of chewed along some of these things. But just on the process, I mean, just using my village as an example, and obviously I wouldn't be saying, oh yeah, I'm against that. But the sites for options in the village, they've been to tribunal on those. We've won that. We've won this, and we've rejected it, and we've won that. So it was against our policy. So it just seems to be strange that we then say, well, we'll put that there. So we set in another rabbit running. In fact, that it's obviously against our policies because we've won it we've rejected it. We've won it. It's gone to tribunal, and we've won it. So why then put it in site for options? It's obviously against our policies. I don't understand that. I mean, I understand we need to put these things in because they need to be discussed and looked at. But if it's against our policy, then we were discussing this in the week. If we don't stick to our policies, then what's the point in having the policies? And it just seems to be a pointless exercise.
I think it's worth just so the issues not favourable is about those kind of setting that groundwork out for those policies. The call for sites is exactly that. Anybody could have put any application in and it will go on the list, 173 of them. Doesn't mean we will progress them. It doesn't mean that what we'll then do is once we've looked at our policies, we'll go through the call for sites and go, no, that's against policy. No, that's against, or yes, that's in, that fits, etc. So I know it's frustrating, but it is a process that we have to go through and we have to demonstrate that we've been through that.
Chair, but I'd have thought, if somebody says to me, well, I'd like to put this site in anywhere, then you would say to them, well, instead of giving them false hope and saying, we're going to look at it, well, it is against our policy because of this. It doesn't matter whether it's my village or any other village. If it's gone through that process, surely you'd say to somebody, a developer, that, oh, I'm sorry, that is, we've already ruled on that, rather than putting it through another process.
No, agreed. But in planning, we don't predetermine, and people can apply it, and we will go through the policy.
I understand planning doesn't need logic. Yeah.
Councillor Silverstone.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad you said we're not predetermining. Actually, what Mr. Dittman said was entirely predetermination. We're not going to do it. We've already said that in a public meeting. What on earth is the point of going to ask the consultation question? My point wasn't, forgive me, that we shouldn't ask the question about a new village. I think we absolutely should. My question was that as an authority, this is the first time the members have seen it. And as Councillor Humphreys asked, what are the issues or the opportunities for other new settlements? Seems to me here, we've got two very specific questions about a new settlement at Thorpe Constantine and another site identified at Wharton, and then a general question about whether are there any other sites. And my point would be, look, if other local authorities are thinking about already developing other sites maybe on our boundaries, I'd like to understand all that, particularly given the infrastructure and traffic implications. And I'd really like to be considering what are the other points that we should be putting to members of the public about other potential sites within North Warwickshire. So my question really wasn't trying to predetermine in terms of saying yes or no to those, and I have absolutely no issue with putting that in the consultation. My point about it being putting the cart before the horses, I think there's a bigger question. There's a bigger issue that we should be talking about in the consultation, not the way it is here, where we've got two very specific questions and then an untutored general question about everyone else. But when we've already saying in the meeting, no, we're not going to do it. What's the point of the consultation?
I mean, my only point was we may not do it, rather it's an option.
That's what you said.
So before you answer that, and Neil, I've got Councillor Humphreys first, and then I'll come back to you.
I was actually wondering what it's going to be. Would you think we're having fun? Can you imagine what's going to happen when all this happens, like Thorpe Constantine? Half the houses are in North Warwickshire, the other half are in Lichfield. The school's got to go somewhere. There's a doctor's surgery going to go somewhere. Who's got the who's going to get the nominations for the social housing? It's going to be a nightmare, isn't it? There's a load of things to, so this committee is only going to have one little dabble in what's going to happen. And if it does happen, then the bum fight will really start, won't it? Thank you.
I think this committee is about setting the plan in place, not individual planning applications. But they will obviously come as an individual planning application, but it's a point well made. Councillor Dervix.
Thank you. But we're in grave danger here of losing sight of what the purpose of this is. And that it is actually a review of something that we've already got, to bring it up to date with more up-to-date information so that people can make an informed decision. And to do that, we have to ask a lot of questions that we may not feel comfortable with, but we still need to get people's opinions on. And that is the basis for them going forward to actually write and publish a new plan next year. But that is the aim. So we need to go through this process, but we need to keep in mind that it is a consultation. It is an exploration of questions that our experts have come up with to try and tease out what is needed for this borough in the future.
No, I agree, and thank you for making that point. Right, I'm going to move us on from, oh, sorry, Dorothy, you could come back.
Well, it's just that I need to know what you want us to do, because we have in there the reference to Thorpe Constantine, because that and the other side just north of Walton are the only two sites that are large enough, in our opinion, to even cater for either a new settlement or a new village. We can either take out all reference to the actual locations, but we do need to still ask the question as to whether new settlement within the borough is acceptable, and that's what the final question is there. So I need to really know what you want us to do.
So I think, are you okay with the rest of it where we said agree, not, or disagree, so that we're going to put the extra question in of each of the options, but you asked on that specific option around settlement. What's the board's view, in or out?
Clearly in. I don't think anybody has said, don't put it in. My comment was more, is this broad enough? Are there other issues? I don't remember once even alluding to the fact that we shouldn't include the question over these sites for new village. We cannot uninvent it. It's there.
Was you saying there should be other
But it should be
considerations?
broader.
Yeah,
Yeah.
other considerations. But I guess that's other sites that might not necessarily fit a whole new settlement, but are significant enough on our borders that we need to think about.
But it's within our borders. There might be things going on around us, but this is within North
So
Warwickshire.
this really crosses into our planning authority.
Yeah, it's inside the borough boundary, and that's the reason why we've actually referred to that. So,
And are they the only two that basically are elsewhere but cross into North Warwickshire?
yeah, there's one in Walton, which is wholly in North Warwickshire,
Yeah.
which would be a larger village. And then the a potential new settlement, and that's the only one that we are aware of.
How far from our border is the proposal at Penny Drake, for example?
And it's at Langleyster as well. Is
Just north of the A5, next door to the northern part of Myra, so outside of our borough.
But pretty close.
It's very close, but it's not within the
is the
borough.
A38 one? Langleyster close to our borders as well.
It's adjacent to, yeah. So it. Sorry to
Yeah, no, but it's,
we need to tease out,
but
is it that you want the other adjoining areas being shown or talked about, or to see if there's any cross-border
personally, I think
working there?
if they're,
That's what I'd
if they're
just like to know.
significant enough, my view would be that we should include them because they're part of our consideration, because they will have an impact on our communities and residents.
I mean,
Yeah, and amenities and road and infrastructure and
Yeah.
buses and all those good
This
things.
is entirely why you were saying the issue was putting the cart before the horse, and I'd rather we'd had an opportunity to discuss it before coming
Yeah.
into consultation.
Yeah, but if so, those that are in our boundaries or cross boundaries or but are in North Warwickshire, we include, which are the two that you put in. And for my mind, anything that is significant enough that's close to our boundaries, just reference it to make a point that these are other developments that are taking place near to but not within North Warwickshire. Is everybody happy with that?
I think what we're trying to say is if they're going to use our schools and facilities, we want them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's simplest way. Yeah, if you're going to come over and steal our stuff, we want to know you steal our stuff.
We have to be careful. We have people from all over the country using our schools. It's where to stop. Okay, I'm going to move us on.
So,
LP2 talks about settlement hierarchy. Councillor Simpson, I know you had a comment on that.
Chairman, it's principally section 7.4, which I entirely agree with. But we need to put some more meat on these bones and particularly take that back to the earlier paper that we talked about, because we know, don't we, that a previous planning board, one of the reasons for refusal on a large development site was essentially that it's gone beyond its ability.
Yes.
So what I'd like us to look at in the options, in the appraisal part, is minus points, because where a settlement has already got to the point that growth has gone beyond its ability to accommodate, then we should be considering if that village can even begin to be considered for further development. And then we have to look at, is the settlement boundary and everything else still appropriate? And there is a fundamental illogicality between refusing a significant application because it's gone too far and then leaving it in the plan as a settlement that can be considered for future development.
Is there a definition of what too far is based on, is it 10% or is it 100% of the original village, for example? You know, if you're going to put the same number of houses in again, what's that
Forgive me,
definition?
Chairman, you chaired that meeting, not me.
If it destroyed the shape of the outline of the village, the curvilege of the village.
I think more question, I don't know if, is there a definition about what overdevelopment or too much development for a village looks like?
There's nothing specific, Chair. We did win an appeal at Woodend, where the figure was around about 25% plus. But a lot of our settlements have already grown to 25%. I mean, Wharton, the equivalent appeal is a classic example of that. So it's very difficult. And looking at other examples throughout the country, this is England, not Wales and Scotland, you will get differing situations applying. And much of it will come down to the level of weight they give to your circumstances in terms of the housing supply. So even in circumstances where services maybe and quite clearly are at capacity, so for instance, the local school can't take anybody else, they may still get a decision for approval of an appeal simply because they look at options like contributions to the school to extend, look at capacity in similar primary schools within a reasonable distance. But there's no hard and fast definitions to what is reasonable or what is capacity. It's very, very difficult. So we will fight where we think it's justified, but there will be many circumstances where we'll still lose if we refuse that appeal, because the inspector will think, in light of the fact that we have a very small housing supply currently, which is around about the 1.5 level, then it may be that basically trumps the situation. And it is frustrating, but you know, it's the planning system we currently work with. There isn't anything we can sort of rely on.
Thanks, Oswald. Did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. what Mark said really. I think it's right to take account of all the larger developments on the borders because the transport corridors, the infrastructure, whether they're outside of our sort of boundaries, they're going to be using the facilities and roads as well. So that could have an impact on where we decide we're going to put or how many houses. So that information, it forms part of our view. And I think the other thing that I'd like to touch on is the fact that some of the point scoring could be the negative point scoring could also help us. Councillor Simpson pointed out where there's been a lot of development and it gets towards changing the look and feel of the neighbourhood plan where it says it's a distinct village or town because of. Once it starts to pass that point where it has a material effect on the neighbourhood plan where, and I don't know where that line is, I don't think any of us know actually where that line is, but where it's going to have a material effect on the shape of the community and the outline of the village. That is something we should be considering in any consultation. So it's just making sure that we're asking all the right questions when we are doing the consultation.
Is that to make a comment like, rather than getting 10 points for a school, actually you got school, yes, but the school's at capacity, can't take any more. So actually it's not 10 points, it's -2 on whatever the number is, I'm just making up numbers there. Because that is part of the consideration about whether that community could take, is there any methodology?
No.
Could we create one?
I think we could ask the question.
There will be county council and all the utility companies and all the infrastructure providers will be asked about questions about capacity and what are the limits and what's their capacity they have. So that will be part of the evidence base moving forward as part of the consultation. But in terms of the questions, we could add in a question about the proportionality of growth in terms of settlements. I was trying to look because I thought that we had something in there. We do for LP10 because LP10 and the Gypsum Travellers site criteria talks about how much it is in proportion to the adjacent settlement. We've asked the question, well, how does that relate to that? But we could easily insert something into LP2 to mirror that in terms of well, what is proportionate.
But I think what's being asked, Dave, is actually not just looking at it. You've got a school, you've got a doctor's surgery, almost having a negative number says yes, you've got a school, you've got a doctor, but they're at capacity, they cannot take any more. So without some up here, you actually becomes negative, not just a positive number in the IROC.
I think
that's what's being suggested, isn't it, or what's being asked? Yes.
I think more than happy to look at that. More than happy to do that. I think for the previous board report, the settlement appraisal, if we could do it as it is now, but with the view to incorporating something, and it may be that we have to do that through words and explanations of things rather than the set scoring that we've got. But we can explore that and see how we can do that, because you're going then into another stage of trying to see how the information
I think
provides.
the problem with trying to do it under the current model is if there is a detriment,
Yes.
i.e. a score,
Totally understand.
it needs to be scored down, not up. It needs to be, I think if we could look at something like that, Councillor Simpson, and then I'll come to Councillor Phillips.
Chairman, you're entirely right. And my thinking was more on, if you like, LP2/2, where it says, should the hierarchy change in any other way? And it was, if you like, having a specific question to that extent. I know we're going to ask all of the service providers and the county council. I think throughout probably the third local plan review I've sat through, I don't remember a single time any one of those statutory providers turned up and said, no, we can't deliver. Not once. So I'm not prejudging, but I'm pretty sure the county council are not going to say, no, we object to any of these at this stage. They'll wait until the application comes in, and that's when they'll do it. And which is logical. But, I think we do have to join our own dots. And we know that I mean, I was trying to avoid mentioning that it was in Morton, but we know we are, our grounds for refusing Morton are entirely that. And Morton's not the only case. Now, I know it makes it hard. I know that, there are tough decisions and it's difficult. But I don't want this to just be, let's develop everywhere, because we have got to do more to recognise the impediments, and the impediments are settlements growing beyond what feels like that village, that kids can be educated there, that the health centre can provide it. And simply doing 10 points because you've got a school or a doctor and everything else, but that you can't get an appointment. Actually, that leads to negative points in my mind, not positives.
Yeah, absolutely, agree. Councillor Phillips.
Oh, quite another myth. I think we get into the Cassandra situation that we seem to always get into, and it's happened on planning before, where we look at highways, we tell highways there's been accidents, and they can never find them. And Councillor Simpson said they answered the question that I was going to ask is how many times have we ever gone to any of these service providers and said this school that services these 1,000 houses, that's 1,000 places. If we stick another 1,000 houses up, will it be able to accommodate them? And they just go, yep. That's it. I mean, you show everything, just put the phone down, don't they? And it's like, clearly it doesn't, I mean, I think we've had a few schools closed. I think one of the ones is closed now, still I'm not sure, but I don't think we put a new school up in North Warwickshire for a substantial amount of time. Have we? I don't think any decent sized one's gone up. So where are we putting all these children that are going to be appearing? And as I said, Councillor Sims says, it's secular logic. They only put them up when we build houses, but we need to build them first, don't we? And I think that's how a negative score would be very handy. As I think it's insane the way, again, it refers back to going round and round in circles. More houses, not enough schools. So
And I do agree with that. And my time at county council, I could never quite get my head around the fact that the way the DFE actually wouldn't allow us to accommodate for known growth. They would only say, well, we need it for this number of kids at this intake. And you're like, that's madness. We know we're going to build houses. We know it's going to, why can't we build some capacity? But they would never sign up. And Councillor Simpson knows this better than I do, would never sign up to additional capacity. Not in a meaningful way, a significant way. Okay.
I just want to assure members that we are having discussions with the county to get as much information as we can, and in terms of capacity and things like that. So I can assure you that we are trying to get that information.
it's not that we don't believe you, we don't believe them.
Okay, so I think on that one, if we could look at something around like that scoring system and perhaps have some more in-depth thinking about what it actually means, and if a community is at breaking point, then we score it down rather than up, just because it's got a score. Right, I'm going to move us on if that's going. I'm going to take LP3 and LP4 together because it's the Greenbelt review, or the Greenbelt and strategic gap. And I know they're slightly different because if you look at where the Greenbelt is within North Warwickshire, it is on that kind of left-hand side and a bit on the right-hand side predominantly. I'm looking at it north to south. So were there any comments from the Greenbelt? Is there any update on where we are with the Greenbelt review, Tom?
Yes, the stage one is that we're waiting for the changes to come back. They are working on the sites information now, because we have to supply them with all the sites that have been put forward, and they are doing the work on that as we speak.
And for those that like this is where we've got consultants in looking at our green belt and assessing it as to whether they think it would fall into grey belt. So it's very much saying how much of our green belt will remain green belt, and under the previous or under the policies, and how much of it is potentially, and I'll say potentially, grey belt should an application come in. And once we get that back, it will give us, go back to Hayden's point, it'll give us some of that indication about actually that site's in or that site's out, or doesn't meet our policies, should I say. Any comments on the questions that are in the plan and the options that are in the plan? Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, John. But by and large, I'm happy with what the questions are. It's a question on question, if you will. Because on LP3, we ask 3 questions. Shall we release no further greenbelt land? Should we look at development opportunities, and should we maintain the restraints? I absolutely like the suggestion that we should be trying to identify other strategic gaps, given the changes to greenbelt. I'd just like to understand, is it not possible to extend the greenbelt? Because if we're asking the 3 questions about go no further or bite into it, logically you'd equally ask the question, do you think the greenbelt boundary should be extended, and so why?
It isn't a question that we've asked, as you can see, mainly because the advice that we've been given is that it would need to be a whole scale change where you've actually taken a large substantial area out of the greenbelt and then to put another area back in. So, for example, for a new settlement. So it's that sort of magnitude of change that you would be looking at. It isn't just changing a little boundary here and there, because we can alter that as part of the local plan review. But where it's a whole scale change in putting large swathes of land in. But again, if that's a question that members would like us to ask, then we're more than happy to.
Chairman, I would like us to ask it, because I think we are talking in here about whole scale change in other areas, like the new settlement, for example. That's a pretty whole scale change. And if we are, genuinely, I get the point that the greenbelt isn't the greenbelt anymore. It's not what it was. And I think my question is partially answered by looking at strategic gaps. But actually, for the sake of completeness, I really would like to understand, because everything I hear, particularly from some of our northern parishes, is that there is a desire for an extension of the greenbelt. And if not even asking the question, people have got an opportunity to say so, other than imagining there is a further question, LP 3/5. I'd just like to ask the question, give people the opportunity to say yes or no.
And I think it's a fair question, and because, what I don't want us to do is almost give up on the greenbelt, almost throw our hands up in surrender and go, we know, because actually there are parts of, the original concept of the greenbelt was to stop urban sprawl, stop the large communities, London, Birmingham, Manchester, from kind of moving into that rural area. And I think that's something we should continue to protect personally. I really do. I know strategic gaps give us some support to when we're impacting communities significantly, as we've up in Dordon, development site and unemployment. So I think we should ask those questions. I think that's why I wanted to take them together, because to me, in a way, they are 2 of our ammunitions in our arsenal to protect our communities. Councillor Davies.
I'm just sort of going forward slightly onto LP4, and the first 2 questions there really just sort of set that something could be done with the gap. Yeah. Do you agree with the removal of land from the strategic gap to provide for additional lorry parking? Or should land be released within strategic gap for an alternative use? Well, it's not really suggesting that we might not want to release land for other uses there. And I think that should be included. I don't know whether you would disagree with me, Councillor Ridley.
So Ridley, would you like to?
Well, effectively, I think if you look at the core sites, you probably see really where this comes from about the lorry parking. I think it's probably where you...
I know why it's there, but we're asking the public. We're not giving the option there of saying, actually, we don't want any change there. We don't want to reallocate it for something else.
Yeah.
We're just saying, do you agree with it?
Yeah, I think the perhaps that's quite a sensible way of, I suppose, asking, can we retain it there? But I think there might be a conundrum here, because there is a couple of areas called the sites for the lorry parking is as far as I understand, in relation to motive. So that's probably where
We
that.
already agree that this is
Yes,
an exploratory
exactly.
exercise to find out what people think. And if we're not asking that question, then it falls by default.
Thank you. That's Osborne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the strategic gap point, I think we've had a ruling on that, and it's a sort of sticking point really when we want to ask people when it's already been ruled on as the gap should remain. So my feeling and instinct would probably be not to include it because the ruling has already happened and the strategic gap should remain. If we're asking people, should it remain or not? I'm not sure whether we're going to get a different set of answers when we've already had a ruling to say that it should remain.
Councillor Ridley, did you want to comment on that?
Simon Chair, thank you, Doodley. It's not in relation to the one that we had a ruling on. It's in relation to another bit of the strategic gap. And obviously there was a big sort of pushback in relation to what safety was landscape character, and also the previous policy. And that was a very strong ruling by the inspector, but obviously need, as was examined within that concept in relation to lorry parking, employment land and whatnot, as we know, is massive. There is a massive need. So I suppose it's looking at the whole concept, the whole of the meaningful gap, the strategic gap, and whether any of it can be released, and not just the piece this side of the M42.
Just to come back to, I mean, it goes back to the question I asked, doesn't it? I mean, if it's already been ruled on and that, but if the question is up for answer, then the whole thing is up for answer, isn't it? You know, so yeah, that was the question. That was right. I mean, it doesn't make sense if we've already defended it and spent all, especially the strategic.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I want to see it, and I'd sooner see it kept out. But if you're answering one question, then you need to answer the question as a whole, don't you? Else the whole thing becomes pointless.
Yeah, and I think there's one thing, as Mike said a while back, we have to ask these questions, even though we might, like say, the inspector ruled on projects like, you know, as an example in the strategic gap, but that question has to be asked because we have to ask all of these questions in order to determine where, as an authority, we're comfortable and where we're not comfortable with, and where our residents are comfortable with.
If you only ask half the question, then you are predetermining by omission.
Yeah, but I think that's what's been proposed, isn't it, to ask, yeah, the fuller question. Okay, anything else on the Greenbelt and strategic gap? Sorry, Doctor, one question. When are we expecting this thing? Because I know it's been quite a while. We got phase one a while back. We went back to them and said, actually, we want more detail. Do we know a date when we expect to get that back?
We've sent them the employment information, but of course then we've joined together to make the local plan review.
Yes.
So we're hopeful that as early in the new year as we possibly can, that we should get the next stage.
So, and do we chase them regularly? Do we give them brief and say, still waiting, still waiting?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we do.
LP5 is the amount of development, i.e. overall housing numbers. And you'll be aware that this changed under the new framework. So, but what also changed from where we are today and where previous plan is actually some of our neighbouring authorities wanted us to take sites which we no longer need to take. So actually that whole landscape has changed. So has anyone got any questions on LP5, i.e. around the amount of development? And also duty to cooperate, and that was it. Well, basically all about LP5.
Oh, sorry, I don't know. I'm miles away
I
then.
was looking at
Sorry,
you put your hand up and then froze.
staring at you. I malfunctioned. Just on LP5, it comes into LP10 as well. Now, I've spent a lot of time with Councillor Bell discussing this issue, we still haven't got a statement of need. We haven't got any numbers, so I don't understand how it can become part of our local plan without any numbers, and we can't just make numbers. If we don't know, we just can't do it. This is banging your head up a brick wall all the time with this situation.
And it's a fair point because, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't involved in the previous local plan. My understanding of conversations that I've had is that a survey or an assessment was previously done around the number of gypsy and traveller sites. We had a number. People didn't like the number, so the number was never published. But actually, in hindsight, had we published the number, we were already over that number, so we'd have been in a better position today because we'd have had a policy that said enough. Now, that's my understanding of it. I don't know if that's correct because others were involved in the previous one, not myself.
Yeah, a study was done in 2019. It
Right.
was published, I think, March 2020. And that's the figures that are used in the adopted plan. So I'm not quite sure where the other study was that hasn't been used, in fact.
It was just something that I'd heard, and it might be urban myth or legend. Councillor Simpson maybe out to the shed
It's
some
not
light.
a myth of legend. It's the answer we're given at every planning board. You haven't got a study, you can't do the numbers because you haven't got a study. It's not urban myth. It's what we tell
But one
you.
was told we did a study. So did we do a study or did we not do a
Yes, we did
study?
do a study.
One was done, and then that is what is in the adopted local plan.
And it's referred to in this.
Yeah,
So that's the one that gives us the numbers, and yet we're over those numbers
Significant.
as we sit as well. We believe we're over those numbers. We actually don't know what the number is, I think it's fair to say. But we're actually well over that number. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to, I've read this a number of times. And actually, it's almost to me the description needs to change a little bit. Because I'm not sure how we'd expect, I'm sure all the planning experts and professionals will get it and will understand. But I really don't know how a member of the public will begin to understand what this section is saying. It gives a lot of information, but there's some key things I think it doesn't give. It's implicit in here that Birmingham will change their number now, we don't need to provide for that, but it doesn't say it. It's implicit that we should be looking at some numbers, but for example, it says the Headner 2022 indicates we should be looking for either 176 or 119, whether it's a trended analysis or something else. It also says, look, we should be aiming at the standard method assessment, but we're not going to use 119 because that won't be acceptable to government. It doesn't say why we're not using 176. And I'd like to understand more about why we're not using 176, because it feels to me as though when everybody talks to me about the Headner, it's almost the 11th commandment. It was handed down and you will take what Headner says. Well, here, Headner is saying 176. And yet the table at 3 talks about 794 or 364. No mention of 176, Jan. So what is really our number? And how do we expect a member of the public who hasn't beaked their way through planning for the last 20 years to understand what we're saying here? Or perhaps you know, Jan.
No. What did you want to come back on that?
yes, we totally agree. It's very confusing. But the standard method was introduced after the Headner 2022 was published, but it's still part of an evidence base that some local authorities are using. For example, I think Coventry, who have already submitted the plan, use the Headner 2022 as part of their evidence base. Because we'll be submitting next year, that is something that is there, and that's the reason why we referred to it, but we haven't used it as an option because we don't think it would be acceptable at all. So the three options that you have are to carry forward the local plan as is. So the annual requirement in the local plan is 479. You could do the annual requirement up to the end of the current plan period, which is 2033. And then we go to the standard housing method, which is 364 per annum. Or we do the 364 from the date of adoption. The starting point in the NPPF is the standard housing method, and anything else is on top of that. So to go for a figure below that, we don't believe is an option that at the present time we should be exploring. So that's to get you to a housing requirement, a housing number, because on top of that, then you have to add in any other numbers under the duty to cooperate. So at the present time, we've alluded to the fact that it's unlikely that Birmingham would be wanting figures. So when we produce this, as you'll see, there's another board report at the end of this paper that is actually saying that Birmingham are now saying that they have enough housing land. So that is possibly something that would be now something that we can actually say, right, okay, that is something that is being dealt with. They're not going to be coming and asking us for any more housing numbers. But that doesn't mean to say that there won't be others. But the starting point through the NPPF is the standard housing method.
Correct me from what Councillor Sims said, but correct me from what the duty to cooperate is we'll cooperate if we are in a position to. Doesn't mean we have to cooperate. So just because Birmingham say or Tamworth or Coventry say, oh, we're falling short of X hundred, can you take them? Our answer could well be no. You know,
it might be at the end of the day, but as part of the issues and options, it is still something that you've got to consider. It's got to be part of that process.
And what about vice versa? Us going to them and saying, we're falling short, can you take some of ours? Is that reciprocal?
That could happen after we've been through the issues and options, and if there's any evidence there to show that we don't have the capacity to deliver, then yes, the shoe would be on the other foot.
And I don't know what other members feel. My whichever methodology we use, the one that is most achievable, that meets what we need, I guess is the answer. In the most sensible way for our residents and communities. Councillor Simmons.
Yeah, just picking up on that point about the head plan. So it's acceptable now that Coventry have used it, but you don't think it would be accepted if we wanted to use it. So there's a question mark then about, well, why do you think, and on what evidence base do you think they would reject it if we used it, the 176? I might have got it wrong, but the other part of it for me is setting out that need is one thing, but it's establishing whether or not that's a genuine need and what we can achieve. So what have we actually delivered over the last 5 years? What do people come and build here when you look at how many permissions have been given versus how many houses have been built? And therefore, where is there real need for North Warwickshire to provide these houses? Because is that where people want to come and be? You know, are we being, because actually, is that really the case? The birth rate in this country is declining, which is one of the reasons why they don't look to expand school places, because a lot of the primary schools got gaps and can't fill across the sites. There's peaks and troughs in that for secondary, but fundamentally, this 364, if that's option 3, using the standard method, 364, sorry, we've never delivered 364 a year. So are we setting ourselves against another target that we're going to fail to achieve? For them to say, you haven't got your supply, you haven't done this, you're not delivering the number over and over again. It just seems a little bit, if we can put 176 in there, why wouldn't we?
What did you want to respond to that? Oh, Mike.
Yeah, just a quick on the Coventry circumstance. Yeah, Coventry they used the Headner, and they did a calculation based on the Headner and subsequent growth. And it was very, very similar to the standard housing requirement that the NPPF now indicates for Coventry. So they were in a benefits position. They benefited from the loss of 35% uplift that they previously had to provide. You may recall a couple of years ago, there was a bit of an argument over whether incoming migration and student numbers had been calculated correctly for the major cities. And the subsequent standard housing method has basically changed that circumstance, and it allowed effectively cities to challenge that or not to use that uplift, and Coventry taking advantage of that. So effectively, unfortunately for some of the shire authorities, this is the circumstance that what's happened is Coventry's gone down and the surrounding authorities have gone up. So it's done that. Difficult to address because we're effectively we only call it the people who unfortunately get the impact or the beneficiaries of it if you're looking at the development industry. So yes, it is an issue, but it has been raised with Coventry as part of their submission of the fund. They will be challenged if there's any slight increase on the standard housing method that could be maximised by the development industry. So it is something that will be fought for. Because the NPPF now says the starting point, and it's quite categorical that the starting point is where you start from, that is giving us as officers a clear direction of travel that if we wish to go less, then irrespective of what may have happened prior to December 2024 and the standard housing method being introduced, that is where the government will expect the figures to be. And personally, I think it's probably looking at that's what they expect it to be as a minimum. So it's going to be an interesting way if we want to argue less, where we will get more up-to-date information from.
So sorry, Mike, can I just clarify? So in December 2024, the new planning framework was brought in that gave us a methodology to look at the house supply. So, but what they're saying is, oh yeah, but that might not suit us. So even though we brought a new policy in, we want whichever's worse for you, depending on which side of the fence you sit. It's kind of how it feels.
It does feel that way in many cases. It was a situation where we brought in certain authorities and ourselves fell slightly into a small period whereby if we had an adopted plan, we had to use the adopted figures up to the date of the 5th year. So our year finishes September 2026. Mm-hmm. And that is partly why we still indicated in option 1 that circumstance, because our figures are in there. But we've been hit by the circumstance with the removal of the funding for the A5. So we know that's not achievable. So as that's not achievable without getting that additional funding at this stage, then we have to think what is the next, if you want to put it in terms of next best opportunity, and the next best opportunity is what the government's currently allowed, which is the standard housing figure. We can go back to other figures and say we should be getting 176, and we can look at development delivery, but that will fall on the basis that the government have already made their assessments of our past record and our expected contribution through the existing local plan, and they come up with a figure of 364.
It does seem a little bit cake and eat it type thing from that perspective. I've got Councillor Osborne first and then Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, it does seem like that we're going to be asking the public a lot of really nuanced questions that even us in the chamber are discussing whether it's the right question, whether we understand the question, whether we understand the impact of the question we're answering. That does concern me a little bit because we do want to engage with the public, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence because I'm the one who's struggling with some of it as well. So I must be a good representation of that. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is, how would we best deliver this to the residents to get the best response we possibly can? Now, I know we always try and get the best responses we possibly can, but if there are any other engagement frameworks or way of phrasing questions, or what would be our plan of delivering this other than just putting a letter drop or having a session that we might get 7 or 8 people turn up to? That's my concern.
That's Simpson.
I'm starting to wonder with planet. Because the answers to earlier questions have been, well, however unreasonable it is, you've got to ask the question. It's a consultation, it's an issues and options statement. Here's something that I'd actually quite like to get the public support on, but I'm being told I can't ask it because the government won't let us do it. But they'll let Coventry do it. And the answer was, well, you know, but for the shires, it's gone up. Well, it hasn't gone up for us, it's gone down substantially. So we've been in exactly the same position as Coventry, and I'm sorry, but what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if this is genuinely, I'm not saying it is, but if I'm genuinely being told that our housing requirement is somewhere between 119 and 176, I struggle with the idea that we should, even to begin with, be asking, shall we stick at 479? Because I don't see where that's coming from. Well, that's what we had. But we know, don't we? And frankly, if we've got information on the same report, the final item, which said Birmingham don't need it, okay, some others might come forward. They may do. They may as a result. But we are predicating the questions based on the fact that they might.
Yeah.
And in the case of Birmingham, that they did. And we know they no longer do. So I don't know why we're asking about 479, and suddenly that is what we had. Why we should stick at 479 when we know across those years we did over 203, 265 and 390. We know we're nowhere near it. And we're only building up, as someone said, a problem for ourselves. But I still, for me, fundamentally, the explanation on LP7 needs to be put in much more layman's talk. We need to help people to understand, well, you had 479 because of X. We no longer think we need 479 because a big chunk of that is Birmingham, and they've told us in their own local plan they don't need it. Therefore, I think that is reasonable. Coventry adopted HIPNA. I don't see in here anything that says why we can't, aside from, well, government might not like it. And fair enough, we're going to have to do what the government are telling us. If the sensible thing is across the whole, we go with 364 because that is the only thing government is going to accept. I think we should be quite clear about this. This is what it is. But, I'm still a million miles from accepting that we can't do a Coventry.
I absolutely agree. I was going to make the point, actually. I would go in at the lowest number, and we can surmise and go, government might not like it. Well, tough. If they're going to challenge, then they'll challenge. And I will come to
I think we remove the question totally. I think it's insane. We're basically saying we can do taxes. So if you want some taxes to go to Tamworth, we do okay. Your other options are UFOs or blimps. It's like we can't deliver the other two. So why are we even offering that? It's pie in the sky. It's like, well, let's whip out some Skyhook, shall we? Well, while we're at it, it's absolutely insane. And I think one of the things that this board needs to be very careful of is not. This has been outlined, but then we should be setting ourselves up for failure.
Absolutely.
We should be setting what we are planning to deliver before we are dissolved to be challenged in infinitum. Because we know it will be challenged in infinitum, but let's not make it too easy for them. And I think if government does turn around and say you've got to do it, I think forcefully we should tell them to insert it somewhere, and we fight them on it.
Absolutely, and I agree. So I think the feedback from the board is go with the number that's the smallest number we can, that we think is deliverable, and use the simplified or use the new methodology. And I think Councillor Simpson's right as well. If it's good enough for Coventry, then why is it not good enough for us? So I think that's a key element. The only other thing I was going to come on to on LP5, and it is one of
Sorry, can I just,
yeah, of course,
just for clarification, please? So from what I understand then, you want option 1 removing, option 2 also removing. So we'd be left with option 3, which is the 364, and then 2 new options of 119 and 177.
I think so. If that's the numbers that we that come out, then yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry, I've got Roman books on the floor. Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a question though? Because obviously in the local plan, when before the world changed and our funding was pulled off the A5, we had a step trajectory so that it was going up, wasn't it, year on year? And I think was it 650 or 700?
700 then 750 eventually.
How does that make us vulnerable at the moment? Does that do we have to use that in our questioning, or can we just, because of our reviews and the fact that we no longer have the push from Birmingham, Coventry and whatnot that they wanted? Because that was, I think, our problem in relation to our duty to cooperate and the fact that they were really under delivering and they couldn't deliver on the housing numbers. I think that's why it pushed ours up so much. But because of no fault of our own, because of our funding, obviously we haven't been able to do that. But does this mean that wipes that slate clean and we can start again? No? Shake your head, that worries me.
Well, the standard housing method in the NPPF is the starting point. And so that does in effect take account of all of that growth that was thought about previously. So as far as we understand it, that is the starting point. But anything from that point that a neighbour is then asking you to do is on top of that 364 figure. So that's where if Birmingham are now saying no, they don't need any more, your starting point is still 364. So in the local plan though, it's 5 years, ends next September. So up until that moment in time, and until we have another plan in place, that step trajectory is still the thing that we are judged against. And that's where it's appeals and planning applications is the current plan, but then we're looking towards the review and changing that.
So the sooner we get our new plan in place without the requirement of those neighbouring authorities, the better position we'll be in. Councillor Sims.
Thanks, John. Just to answer Dorothy's question in terms of what do we want to see. Given the answer in terms of, well, this is where the standard methodology starts. If it is that clear, then I don't really see anything wrong with asking option 1, 2 and 3, but I would like to answer option 4 and 5 as well. Because, you know, if this is going to be a straightforward response and all the professional consultees will say, well, you can't possibly go with that because it won't be allowed. I don't want to be in a situation where everybody's launching batteries with their responses saying you can't do any of these. So I don't, you know, whilst I would not wish the answer to come back saying 479, and I would very much like to not be 264, if the only,
You should ask the question.
the only answer is it's going to be 364, then I think, you know, that feels like where we're going to, but I am still not really getting the point.
So I think what you're
So if
suggesting
somebody else can do Edna, why
is leave those in, but also put the other numbers in as well as options.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, right, I'm going to move us on. Councillor Dirks.
I was going to move this one as well.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so
To employment, if I
which is exactly what I was going to move us on.
there is a reference here to Iceni. I don't understand what that is. The last Iceni plan that I'm aware of was against the Romans 2,000 years ago. We lost. So what does it mean this time, please?
It's actually a consultancy we got, and it is something that they were the company who actually did the Hedner part of the employment side and the housing side, but also an alignment paper that looked towards the West Midlands and the Hedner to try and join them up. So it's a consultancy firm.
might just be worth
Yeah.
detailing that then, so it's clear, because it's been referenced a number of times. Question I was going to ask on employment planning is there's a lot of reference in here to the West Midlands Strategic Employment Site Study 2024. I'd like to see the subset of that says the North Warwickshire Employment Strategic Study, because what I'm really concerned with is that all of our employment requirements are not coming from North Warwickshire. They are coming from our surrounding neighbours, the likes of Birmingham, the likes of Tamworth, and I understand that. But actually, my primary focus is on North Warwickshire and what's our employment requirement in North Warwickshire. It's just a kind of one of my personal things that says yes, because West Midlands are going to keep pushing into that gap around Dunton, etc., for strategic sites because people will travel there. But my understanding is most of our residents commute out of North Warwickshire for jobs. Now, if we're going to say they don't have to do that because we're going to give them jobs local, then that's a different debate. That's a different question. But that's not what I think the report refers to.
Which, Chair, we already bring supposedly 18,000 jobs in a day into North Warwickshire.
That's 25, I think it is.
Well, if it's 20, it's even worse than, so, there is no clamour for jobs, really.
Yeah.
What there is clamour for spaces for warehouses. Bugger the jobs, we just want somebody to put the stuff in.
Any comments? Is that a hand up, Mark, or you just want to punch the desk? So I think that's a real thing. Councillor Simpson.
My comment, it basically says it wasn't housing. I think for the layman, this is not intelligible. I think the planning professionals and some of those will get it, but I think we need to rehash the description so that an ordinary member of the public can begin to understand it. That there isn't, for example, that explanation of all I see years. And I think we do need to help people to get to the point of being able to answer the question. And I don't think it does.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment from a perspective of it needs to be understandable from our residents' perspective, so that we know, and can understand the question that's being asked. Because I think, as has been alluded to earlier, if we're all sitting again, does that mean? I think he's doing. I mean, that's the only comment I was going to make on employment. I know there's a number of call for sites, but it does concern me that again, going back to earlier, we may be worrying more about other authorities' needs than our own. And personally, I want to focus on what's North Warwickshire's need.
Just checking.
Any other comments on LP5? We've got the Gypsy and Traveller, which is also part of LP5, which is where you have reference. You're actually right in that 5-year period. There was numbers, but we are significantly over that number. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, John. That's exactly what I wanted to focus on. The questions are, do we stick with the 2019 numbers? But consistently, planning bodies advise the 2019 numbers don't exist and you can't use them. How can we be asking people the question of, shall we stick with 2019 if we are not using it already? So 2019, number of new pitches required over the period was 19. We are way in excess of that.
Mm.
So I don't think we can even begin to say, shall we roll forward the 2019 appraisal, because we haven't done it and we've got no chance of doing it. And undertake a fresh assessment. Well, I think that's all that the only game in town, isn't it? Because we either have got 2019 or we haven't.
Mm.
And if we have got 2019, can we please tell Development Control we've got it?
Any comments?
Why do you think we've got something we haven't got?
That's all it is.
This is what I don't get on with Mark on this, because we repeatedly hash it out at planning, and I don't understand, have we got the number or haven't we? And if we have got it, why are they consistently coming through planning? If we've met need, I don't.
I think we're all shaking our heads as well. To pick up on Councillor Simpson's point, we do sit there at planning board and we're told we get these applications and we go, whereas your gypsy and traveller site, we've already met our need, why are we getting others? And the argument, as I understand it, is always, well, the fact that there's an application means there's a need. And you go, well, that's,
So it's non-ending.
so where does it stop? And the fact we've got it in our policy, because I'm with you, I thought we're often told that the reason we can't say no is because we don't have a policy that
We haven't got assessments of need.
assessment of need.
Yeah, we're being told that we have got assessment of need in 2019, and not merely have we got it, but we can roll it forward.
Yeah, because it rolls forward to 2033. So actually, until September of next year, they remain our need, assessment of need is my understanding. So yeah, so Doc, you might want to have a chat with your colleagues in planning and explain to them, we do have a number, we do have a policy, and until we change the plan, it's,
I suggest that we have a chat outside of this meeting about that. That's
Okay.
it, don't I? Oh, thank you.
So we've got stuck to a yes minister situation.
what shall I say, so Okay, anything else on LP5 with the Gypsy and Travellers? We've got LP6, which is additional employment land. Where we are asking, where we asking the question as part of the local plan, it talks about, I've already referenced the West Midlands Employment Strategic Assessment of Sites. It does confirm that. If anyone else has got anything to add to that, or Councillor Simpson.
Chairman, it's a really broad question, but with the proposed wording on page 112 or 27, whichever you look at, are we saying this is any or all? Because I'm just confused. I mean, I think we need a lawyer to look at what is this saying and how does it work? Because I've seen other things where, it's almost like the green belt, grey belt. It's got to be all. And I think what we're saying is it has to be all. But we're not saying that. And I think we need to be.
Well, it's saying and, isn't it, rather than all?
I don't know. That's why I just don't know if is it any or is it all. I don't think it can be any, but we don't say it.
As in, you mean that it should say all proposals for?
No, all the criteria.
Yes, because it says and after each section.
That's what I'm reading. I think it needs all of those,
Yes, and
that and that and that and that. So not
Until you
all.
get to B2 and B3, where it says all.
Okay, you just need to tidy that up then to make sure it's legible. Because if you, I think you're right. If you put that into, the majority of our residents, they're probably,
I mean, I think I know what we're saying, all,
yeah, I think we're saying all. I think we're saying all.
but we don't say it. And we, I am aware of other people who've lost, other authorities who've lost cases because they have not been explicit that they meant all.
Yeah, that plus that. Okay. Okay. You happy with that, Doc?
But yeah, we may have to have a caveat just to explain what and all means. And means this is in addition to, not separate from or extra, or it's an alternative. It's all.
yeah, I think under where the section B is, and then it's got the one, a little I, two little I's and things like that. That it's demonstrated to the council's satisfaction that the immediate requirement cannot be met on any of the following. So it's got to be either on previously developed land, or it's an allocation, or it's land already in the local plan. So those subsections, but the main criteria of A, B, excuse me, and the final one, it should probably have C next to it, is that there are ands, but there's little ors underneath each of those ands.
Great.
It is. It's because we were trying to be as belt and braces as we possibly can be in terms of this,
But
it's not saying.
it needs to be understandable. Unfortunately.
Just go to a lawyer.
Yeah, I think we need to, if we could review that, because
Can I just be clear though that you're saying that the lawyer needs to do that before it goes out? Or are you saying it needs to have a lawyer
I think they
post
absolutely,
going?
I think they absolutely have to do it before it goes out, because otherwise you're not consulting on the question that you really want.
you're asking,
Can I just say then that we would either have to delete the policy at the moment for it to go out, because the aim is for this to go out tomorrow morning, and I cannot guarantee that a lawyer will have seen it by then.
Chairman, I think we've discussed so many alterations tonight. I don't think we can go out tomorrow morning anyway. Unless somebody's going to sit up all night typing in all those alterations. And then I'm going to say to you, so what is the revised proposal?
so I think we have got a little bit of time, haven't we? So for the 6 weeks, because the current deadline is less,
Chairman, we absolutely have, because this runs over Christmas, we've allowed
extra time.
extra time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it might be that actually, once we make the changes, it could go out in a week's time.
Okay.
Okay, right, LP7 is about housing development. It's just refers to the NPPF, current NPPF. Yeah, so- Any comments on LP7? Okay. LP8 talks about wind farm.
Oh, so Chairman, one other point on,
And 6.
LP6. Everything I thought that what we're looking at in LP6 was almost, we're looking at an exceptional development, that they've got all of these things. And when I read all of that, whilst I think I understand where we really want to, I'd like to be really clear that we're looking at something that is an exceptional proposal, as opposed to anybody can try again.
Yeah, I mean, because employment land is covered under LP5. This is employment land outside that. So there is part of it that says you can almost take LP6 out and incorporate it into that part of LP5.
As in question LP6 where it was?
Is in what, sorry?
Question LP6/1. Do we carry on with it or not?
Yeah.
But I think perfectly have to carry on with it.
Mm.
Clarify what it says and make it clear that it's an exception.
Yeah, it's an exception. It is exception, yeah.
I think we need something there that covers the exception, so that we can't be
Yeah.
backed into a corner.
My only point was you could almost have a paragraph within LP5, the employment part of LP5, that covers exceptions. Or we have a second rules, so separate, okay? LP7, LP8, I was on to about windfall. Any questions on LP8? Councillor Ridley.
Just quickly, why did we set the 60? Was that just, can you just explain that?
It was based on the evidence that we had that we prepared for the local plan examination, and it came out to roughly about the 60 grand.
We could build that, I mean.
Answer the question. Okay, we're on to LP9, affordable housing provision. This one caused some conversations earlier. Any comments on LP9? Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, John. So it's almost a rehash of what we said before. If Hedna says X, why are we not going with Hedna? No, because it feels like we've got, an indicated need. We're saying that we don't believe it, but we're not saying where the evidence for that is. We equally have a situation where we know we are absolutely struggling to deliver 30%. And we're not struggling because there isn't necessarily a need, but because registered social housing providers don't want to come here. So are we not simply looking at 50%, creating something that we will inevitably fail at? But what I'd like to understand fundamentally is, look, everything I understand is that we've got to have an indication of need. We've got that in head. I think it's quite straightforward if you stick with what you are being advised in this sense. But I'm struggling for, we've got Headner at that level. Why are we all but doubling it?
Dorothy.
In terms of the 50%, it relates to greenbelt sites, and that relates to golden rules within the MPPF. And so the question is merely to look to see whether we should be actually reflecting that within the policy, because outside and normally inside the development boundary, it'd be either 30% on brownfield, 40% on greenfield, but it's where that greenbelt golden rules apply, then that would be the 50%, and that's the reason why we're just asking the question: should it be included in here, so that people know that in a greenbelt situation, if it's not an allocated site, then the requirement is 50%. But that is merely a question rather than.
I think it's straightforward, Charles. If it's a golden rule on the government requirement, there's no point asking.
Yeah. I mean, I do have concern that actually, if you go to a developer and they want to build and the site happens to be in Greenbelt and you tell them you've got to have 50% social housing, I'm not sure how commercially viable that would be. So you may be, but if that, as Councillor Simpson says, if that's a golden rule that's part of the MPPF, then
You
you
haven't got a choice.
Yeah, you haven't got a choice. And I do agree. We shouldn't be asking questions that we have no options on or choices on.
That's fine. No problem.
LP10 talks about gypsy and traveller sites again, but this is a specific policy that talks about what a site is, what it means as a pitch. And I know we've had some debate on this at planning, Councillor Simpson, haven't we, around what a pitch is.
We have. And this is where the plan, in my humble opinion, is saying one thing in LP5 and another thing in LP10. Because in LP5 we're saying, shall we stick with 19? And in LP10 option 3 says you could get 24. Why are we saying 24 if we think it's 19?
Where you see
Option
I see
3
total pitches.
says 24.
If I could explain,
Please.
it's to do with the category of the settlement. At the moment, the policy relates to the proportionality of, in relation to, if a gypsy traveller site came adjacent to a local service centre, then what is the appropriate size that site should actually be in relation to that size of settlement? And at the minute, the policy doesn't give any indication. It just says it should be proportionate. So what the option here is saying the settlement 1 categories, which is your market towns, is this a way forward that explains what we mean by proportionate when a planning application comes forward? So LP10 deals with planning applications for gypsy traveller sites. And so this is only an option to say, well, what do we mean by that? In a category 2 settlement, well, what we mean by the size of site is 4 statics, 4 tourers, a visitor pitch and a day room, so that it's very clear exactly what it is.
So how does that correlate to the 9 that was in the 29 assessment?
So that's the number of pitches that we need to plan for. This is in relation to planning applications that come forward, that we need to understand what that word proportionate means within the policy of LP10.
So that previous definition of 9 in the 2019 plan doesn't really mean 9. It means it goes back to this discrepancy around planning application almost being treated in its own right from a number. Councillor Simpson?
And Sharon, every lawyer will cite contra preferentum. You know, if you had intended 9, 19, you would have said in here, okay, maybe in proportional terms you could get up to 24, but actually we don't mean you can have 24 pictures, because we mean our policy says the 2019 statement which caps it. I think you can address this by saying, look, yeah, this is a reasonable basis for proportionality, subject always to the maximum amount permitted under LP, whatever it is.
Councillor
You've
Fife?
got to tie the two together. You cannot say
Yeah.
in one part of the plan you can have up to 24 on one side, up to 10 on another, when actually you're saying the policy says 9.
So I think we need to tie that back up, Mike, to
Yeah.
that 9, saying this is a representation. So Councillor Phillips and then Councillor Davids.
I think the Councillor Simpson's expressed more eruditely and correctly than I was going to sort of question. It's not about just only the idea of numbers, it's how we enforce, isn't it? We utilise these numbers for enforcement, and linking these numbers together clearly gets us closer to it, because without stating the obvious, 90% of the time what we're dealing with is people doing things are then retrospective, wasn't it? Let's face it, that's roughly what we're dealing with. I don't think it's controversial to say that. I think having a more robust constructed document on this side of the fence will help with that.
Absolutely. Felix?
Thank you. I'm not sure whether this is where it needs to be put, but I think one of the things that is important is what do we mean by a static pitch? And how big is a static pitch? Because in the past, one of the things we've seen is static pitches that then have a toilet, that then have shed, that then have another static on the same pitch. And I think one of the things that we need in our policy is to say, this is what we mean by a pitch, rather than just leaving it open. And I think, and I'm not sure which policy that needs to go in, but I think that it is something that should be considered.
So that's what I'm saying. a pitch.
For the clarity for people that are asking for pitches and for.
So a pitch constitutes one static, one tour up, and
and-
amenities block.
So we don't see a sort of gradual intensification of pitches.
Can we include that some sort of definition as to what a pitch means?
And Chairman, so I just remember two other things which I absolutely have got to say. If you look at 15.3, it says there are a shortage of authorised sites at a national, regional and local level. We said in 2019 we needed X and we'd over-delivered. So actually we're saying there either is a shortage or there isn't.
Well,
And
2019 numbers will tell me there isn't, because we've got more than 9 already.
Exactly, and if we're proposing we stick with 2019, we cannot then now say here there is a local shortage. And similarly, there are a number of potential options to help address the shortage of pitches, which in LP6 we've already predetermined is 19, which we've delivered more than. So there is, by definition,
Yeah.
if the 2019 assessment on our proposed policy is real.
Well, I'm guessing that from what's been said, unless we do a different assessment, that is still the plan, that is still the number until September of next year. When the current plan effectively expires.
That's correct, yeah, but it has been addressed and we can't stop applications coming in. And the question given to us is, has the need been addressed? And is there any other available sites to deal with this pitch that has come in today? And our response is, no, we haven't got any additional pitches to address. So we still have to address people submitting applications and saying, there is a need for this person who submits my application. Have you got somewhere for them to go? And we haven't.
That seems contradictory to me. So we've assessed our need and it's 9. So if I get the 10th, it's a no. Because we've assessed our need, we don't need 10, we need 9.
The fact that it's gone in is the need.
Yeah, but that's then the 9's wrong.
If I can just say though that it's if you, when you look at housing needs, there's the different types of housing needs. There's the bricks and mortar housing needs that are generally dealt with the headland. And then you have the gypsy and traveller needs, as well as the boat accommodation as well, which is within the gypsy and travellers needs assessment. But all of the needs are minimum figures. They're not maximums. They're not saying that is all that is required. That is just giving you an indication, similar to the HEDNA, of what our housing need is at a moment in time. But it's not saying that that is it and there'll be no more, that it's a minimum requirement and that's the requirement.
But doesn't the same logic apply? We've talked about housing quite extensively and said, we understand our minimum, we understand we've got a number, but we have to consider other things like infrastructure, roads, etc., etc. Surely it's a similar principle applies. So the 9 is a minimum number, not the number. Okay. Yes,
I don't want to argue with Doc. I think she was just trying to substantiate the point. I think what we're getting stuck into is one of these logic loops again, aren't we? Where it's like it's a secular argument. We were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. Let's say we have 10. We have met demand, but then another 5 people rock up. There's a demand. I need a garage. So you know what? I'm just going to go onto someone's land and be able to have a garage. And I'm going to put a car in there. You know what? I need an. But now I need another garage, so I brought another car. It's just ridiculous logic, isn't it? I think it's our choice as a council, isn't it? We draw a number and we fight it in court. That's the only option we have going, isn't it? But we pick it up, and if government says you've got to keep doing it, then we go to tribunal on every single one. We have to draw a line in the sand. That's our option, isn't it? So that's not what the plan is and advising to say, but that's the choice we make, isn't it? We can't. It's a logical, isn't it?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I think it's almost that cyclical. It doesn't make sense because the moment someone applies, it's almost like, well, don't bother having a number then.
Yeah, don't bother
with it.
yeah.
Because the moment I get an application, means I'm going to have to satisfy that need. That's Simpson.
I think, Joe, part of this is this issue. Are we trying to address local need, national or regional need? And to an extent,
Well,
I think we have to address all of it. But what I am struggling with is what is the local need and putting a number on that. Because all of the applicants that I'm not comfortable with have not necessarily been previously resident in North Warwickshire. They may have been relatively close. But it's, if you like, we start out with housing numbers because we've got to, and quite properly should treat gypsy and traveller families in the same way as we treat other people.
I'd argue.
And if there is a local need, then I'd like to see what it is.
Well, I'd argue the clue's in the title. It's a local plan.
But all the time, the issue is, to quote what I've said, is there an alternative site? Well, actually, I think is there an alternative site in the place that people were previously living at? We're trying to fix, I think, in this, and the way we're trying to fix everybody's problem, everybody's need. We've got to be clear on what are we trying to do here. And I get, there may well be a national shortage. There's nothing in planning aside from the duty to cooperate that says we've got to fix our neighbours' problems as well as our own.
Yeah, and by definition, it's a travelling community. Anyway, you can argue. Right, I'm very conscious of time. I'm very conscious of where we are in plan. I'm very conscious that there's a load of other really important policies. Are there any specific policies that people want to pull out or have comments on? I think bearing in mind, we're going to probably need to have a review of this before it goes out anyway. That's Simpson.
I've got two then, Chairman, in that sense. Rural employment, I'd like to see something in there as a greater level of encouragement for traditional uses, what those buildings were previously used for. We are giving support for conversions, for alternative use. But actually, I think we really need to be saying, well, actually, we'd like farms to be farmed. We'd like farm buildings to be farm buildings as well. And how do we encourage that? What level of additional support can we give? So I got three. The Thames Valley, we're talking, you can hear about the advantages that are going on and stuff. But actually, we know there's a current application that might well very much adversely affect that. And I think we need to be cognizant of where we are as well as where we want to be. And then my other points really all come down to solar farms and BESSS.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that those policies go on the questions that we.
Is that LP 35, the renewable?
I don't, LP 34 and 35, with all of them, you know, I'd like to see a different level of questioning, and I think within, and all of that is having a new policy, setting out closely where we, how we determine it. I know we have policies, and government is saying they don't have to show exceptional circumstances, they can do it whether they feel like. But I think we need then to be clear to help ourselves. Should we have a community that wishes to say, look, you know, that there's more to this than simply there's a national need. And at the minute, I think all we've got here is an open door.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I personally think until 160 overrides the previous ones. If you look at 154 and 155, I would argue that 160 overrides that says actually just because it's renewable doesn't mean it, you know, appropriate development. And I think it's well documented my concerns around battery storage and lithium ion. Was sort of won't raise it again because it is a genuine concern.
But you will raise it again in the future.
No, I'm not going to. Well, I will raise it again in the future until the risk minimises, or I will keep raising it. Okay, thank you for those councillor Simpson.
But there is nothing in the proposal we've got in front of us on BESS that gives you a leg to stand on, because it doesn't mention safety.
No, and actually I think it needs to be included in there, and I can give you plenty on the safety elements of that. What's frustrating is the National Fire Chiefs Council actually provides a policy in which Warwickshire Fire and Rescue are meant to cover off a number of things on these sites. And when I spoke to the Chief Fire Officer, he talked about, well, we just look at access and we look for some water. Yeah, so I was thinking, that's crazy. Are there anything else on the policies under there? Because I noticed we've got some new policy areas as well, with which and on the new policy areas, can I, Councillor Clues asked me to make sure that we talked about that man set quarry and the perimeter, because I think there's a concern from the parish council about the site map isn't quite accurate. Yeah, we just need to make sure that that's captured as well.
So that's a change that you want us to make before we go out for consultation.
I think if we can, I think it would be easier to make it there because we know it's not right. So it's pointless putting something out that we know not to be right, knowing it's going to be picked up and then correcting it in the revised edition. We might as well just do it now, fix it. Councillor Humphries.
I was looking at LP 34, which is lorry parking. Whatever happens on whatever development we get in the future, we've got to have lorry parking. Otherwise, they're just going to end up all over the place like they've done in the past and continue to do so. So I don't know if we're planning to actually have a site for it or force it onto a site that's going to be built.
Yeah, both.
I mean, I think there is the one at Junction 9 that might happen. If that happens, there's some there. But we've turned several sites down because it's been in the wrong place.
Yeah, and I think it's appropriate, and obviously the call for sites, if there's a site there that's appropriate, it be considered as part of the proposals.
Yeah. Thank you.
One thing I did ask is, just so you're aware, on the call for sites, I asked, could we perhaps colour code it on the spreadsheet that showed the difference between residential and employment? So rather than trying to kind of go through, to look at almost a nice snapshot of saying, well, these are residential applications, these are employment, and these are a mixture.
It's a little bit difficult, unfortunately, Chair, because.
So you've actually got a column on it though, Mike, that says residential or employment, so.
You may have a duplicate map because some sites have submitted for anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we have purely residential, purely employment, and either or. Yeah, something like that.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, either. So one that would do both.
Yes, one that will do both. So you can literally look and go, well, I know that's an employment site, or I know that's a residential site.
Yeah, we're certain.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions on any of the other policies? There's an awful lot in here, and apologies, I know we're moving through this pace, but we're also, it's important that we get this right. I think Councillor Phillips mentioned it. This is a legacy. People will be debating this for a long time to come. And the last thing I think any of us want is them saying, well, what are they thinking? Or not, as the case may be.
Let's demonstrate we thought.
Okay, if everyone's happy, then I'm going to move on to agenda item 7.
So can I just ask, I've been thinking about it, I wasn't clear what I wanted to say. How many houses would you expect to get in an ordinary sense in 100 metres frontage? I'm looking at the HMO draft policy, and it says it shouldn't be where you get more than 10% of the number of residential properties within 100 metres radius. And I'm just trying to work out
What does that mean?
how practical that is. So will be permitted where they would not result in this type of accommodation forming over 10% of the number of residential properties within 100 metre radius. Is that what we're saying? There's a circle and it's more than 10% within that circle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is relatively small, so on a terrace street, perhaps most houses in a terrace street are about 3 metres wide normally, in old terrace street, so you can see how roughly.
And has this number, Charles, this come from what other authorities are doing, or is it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, it is a suggestion of a policy. It isn't saying that this is something that we would have to do, but it is a suggested wording box.
So do we know roughly how many houses in a, let's say, Long Street Dorman, you might get in 100 metre radius?
So probably 2 either side, isn't it? I would guess.
I don't know. It's a 3 to 4 metres long, it's still a large number.
100, yes, sorry, that's, yeah.
And it's not along, it's
Well, it's round, yeah,
round, so it's potentially it's quite a large number.
because it could be those on the opposite side of the street, yeah? Or it would be those on the opposite side of the street as well.
So
Behind.
just think,
Yeah.
I'd just like to, perhaps if we can understand that a bit more, because the intent is not to say no to HMOs, it's absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's quite
But
difficult because
it's trying to manage what the overall exposure
it
is.
very much depends on where it is. And I guess actually in a way that's appropriate, because if it is in a more condensed area, then it's going to have the bigger impact potentially on those houses than if it's a fairly rural area where it's got a lot of space around it.
And it says specifically would not give rise to an unacceptable adverse cumulative impacts on, amongst other things, parking. But it's not saying in here, unless it says elsewhere, what the appropriate number of parking spaces should be. Because if you're getting a HMO, potentially you've got to re-engineer the conversion of that building and provide for parking, which is what you were doing at plan before. So I'm just,
It's just.
I'm not sort of feeling
Just
that I
a
understand.
suggested policy, it's not saying.
No.
that has to
But
be.
I think the policy should give us structure within a planning application. You go, all right, it's 8 residences, or it's going to be converted into an 8-room HMO. Therefore, that needs 8 car parking or 10 car parking or whatever that is. One point something a room or something like that.
I think I'd be a lot happier if we were saying straight line in that street, 10%. Make it a radius. I can't understand what the number's going to be.
So I'm just thinking like using I live in terrace, just using sort of logic of how people have grown up, as to how my streets evolved. Sort of thinking we've got 20 houses here, showing me. So I just say every house has got now 2 cars, and we haven't got any HMOs. some of the houses have 4 cars because they've got 2 children.
Yeah.
So you can see just by logical growth of a normal family how cars. You say one of those houses you're going to stick 8 people in. That's 8 cars. The 8 cars are going to go nowhere. They're going to go some. It's. I think we need to look at how we do that properly. Put in lines. There's a lot of the logical line or something.
Because we've got a new build, don't we? A new build, it has to have 2 parking spaces. So if someone builds a new property, then it has two car parking
It's
spaces.
almost like the fact it's more backpedaling on what we're trying to achieve by new building, by insisting that new builds have 2 parking spaces. We're then going up, let's pick ourselves on the other side and go, old houses, rock on, let's have some more cars.
Yeah, don't forget, we can only be looking at this of 6 flats.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about 2.5,
Currently,
and it becomes a HMO, policy will only, so I think, I'm just confused as to where we're going.
but there is an answer before out in consultation at the moment that talks about actually all HMOs would have to come through planning for consideration.
And that's how we need to tie this proposed policy into what that's saying, I think.
But if you had to go.
So, whoa. Doc, did you want to come back on that? And I'll come back to you, Dave.
The way that I was thinking the 100-metre radius or some sort of radius was because you could have a short cul-de-sac, but around the corner there could be a lot of HMOs. And would you want that to be influenced? Because if it's only on a linear line, then you'd only look at the little cul-de-sac and not the wider area. So that's the reason why we were actually thinking of the radius. But happy to talk through that.
Whilst I understand the Doc's logic on that one, let's face it, most HMOs that are retrospective ones are going to be, I mean, obviously looking at a policy for what the main use is, it's going to be cheap, affordable, developers scraping up terraced houses, isn't it? That's mainly where they target. I understand the radius thing, but that's what we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
Scrape up these like cheap houses that come along and turn them into HMOs.
Okay.
I mean, to that, it's not cheap accommodation for some, because the last one we looked at, the rents were going to be between 60 and 50 a
Cheap
month.
to buy. Cheap to buy.
Yeah, as an investment.
Yeah, it's basically.
But I mean, we can't put that down for everything, can we, Mark? If you look at, I'm just thinking inside the Haverston is a red line for a development area. And we have a developer that actually works in this town. He doesn't have to put any parking for any of the flats he builds. If he built an HMO, I would have thought he'd have the same issue. He wouldn't have to build any parking inside the red line of the town. And I'm not sure of any other towns that we've got actually have red line areas, which actually limits us doing stuff anyway. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's a measure we've got currently, or it's a measure that's being proposed in people have a comment about that. I think people who live in those types of streets and locations will be better to judge whether a radius is the right way of doing it. I think it's as good as any.
Chairman, May again, let's take the centre of, I don't know how the houses work together. Middle of Coleshill, so you get an HMO over some of the shops in Coleshill, but you can't park there anyway, but you could end up with 10 people wanting to park.
Yeah.
You can't force it on them because there's nowhere to park in that development. There's houses on both sides of the roads and properties behind them.
Well, to me, if it was 10 rooms in HMO would come to planning, and we would be having that conversation with them about parking,
So you stop the plan, that would be the thing to stop the HMO.
which is what we did at Dordon, because there wasn't sufficient parking to accommodate what was being proposed.
Highways wouldn't still insist that you could fit 10 cars, on the road, on top of each other. But
Okay.
Or
election. Yeah. Any more comments on plans? So I think that's what we're just.
Just quickly, this is the new policy, one of the other ones that's on here.
One of the other new ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, but you.
No, go on.
Just very, very, very quickly, it's the Birch Company spoil heap. I know on here we've got options 1, 2 and 3. And 3 says do not have a policy in the local plan review. So it's either a country park employment use or any specific site using national and other policies. And then this next question is option 1, country park, option 2, employment site. If employment use, do you agree with the following? But for me, I would like to see in here somewhere about the fact that it's regenerated, the fact that it is industrial heritage. Perhaps we could cover that. Would that be possible on some of it? Because that's not an option on here in relation to because it may not be,
Policy, you mean?
yeah.
What for recreation?
For recreation, yeah, but it may be that it's not up to a standard where it can be used as a country park at the minute. But if you throw the baby out with the bathwater and it's used in employment sites, is there something that we can say? Again, we just leave it. It's regenerating. It can add to the
Is it
BT
accessible by residents? Can residents walk it, for example?
No, it's not.
They can't.
It's still in the ownership of IM, isn't it?
Okay.
Despite the fact we had a whole subcommittee on establishing a policy and developing a country park, it took us over 2 years.
But in a similar vein as Councillor Ridley, really, the policy on Coleshill Manor site. There's, have a proactive new policy, do not have a policy on a specific site. Again, it's IM properties. Do we want to have a look at, some other things that they've got to have planning commission, they've implemented some of it, not all of it. At what point, yes, we've got HS2 creating havoc in that period, part of the borough, but actually should something more proactive be expected in that site? And I think, not logistics warehousing preferably. Yeah. No, there's the
That's
pool,
over.
and that's further on, and there's the wave. But then the
Yeah,
Coleshill Manors, the other side.
Yeah, isn't there some heritage stuff there?
Yes.
This wasn't rewrote history. The first battle, wasn't it? Was put there. Civil War. Councillor Davies.
As we're on heritage,
Would you know?
I've been trying to get in on this for some time. LP 15, we're talking about historic farmsteads, so on, which is very important. I think it's really important that we don't dilute our policy at all. That if anything, we strengthen it. And I think one of the things that may have a place in here is what we do about sites that might be part of our industrial heritage or might be suitable for art that celebrates that. But also, is there something that we can put in here about, I'll call them enabling developments that don't enable? Is there a way that we can put something in the historic environment policy, which gives us some backup for when people don't do what they've actually agreed to do?
Well, this is the opportunity to do exactly that.
I think that we should try to put something in there. I don't know what the legal situation is. It's probably one for the lawyers, but should we be putting something in there to actually strengthen our teeth, as it were, to actually protect the historic assets that we have? I know we've got listings, we're talking about the HEAs as well, historic environment assessments. But if we do these assessments and people ignore them, what can we do? Should there be something in this policy that actually backs it up and makes it easier for us to say, well, this is what
Something to
we've
say
got.
it will be progressive enforcement and
Yeah,
Doesn't section 106, if that enabling project is part of a section 106, it's legally bound for them to do. Now, I do know they roll companies at some stage and it doesn't happen. That could still happen when we've got enabling legislation to stop it.
yeah. And I think that's fair point. The whole 106 debate about, ensuring that people who have promised 106 money as part of an application come forward with it and actually do what they say they're going to do. I think it all comes down to the enforcement conversations that we were having on Friday.
Yeah.
about ensuring that the heritage is
Should
protected.
that be made explicit in our policy?
Does Jennifer Ledbetter, is Jennifer happy with what we got in the heritage piece?
Yeah, she's added the bit on the farmsteads, and that was the only thing that she said
Is
about.
there anything on the historic buildings or anything like that about
She
actually
didn't say.
what we could do from an enforcement perspective for people who are not protecting the asset?
It's whether you're erring into the area of development control, you know, in terms of the assessment, as you say, Section 106s and national and local choices, whether we can explicitly say in a local policy, or by the way, we're going to hit you with a big stick if you don't do what you say you're going to do. In politest of terms.
In theory, we can put a policy is something we've developed. It's what we as an authority intend doing in the event of. So that's what
You can, yeah, I mean, we look at the wording, but what I'm struggling to do is to see how we put into a policy the wording that, if I'm inferring right from what you're saying, if you don't do what you say you're going to do, it's nowhere else. And I'm not quite sure.
I think it's something like, if you're a custodian of a heritage asset.
But it's already there in the listings.
Yes,
It's implicit in the listing in the it's not
but what if you don't?
legislation.
But what I'm saying is, in our policy, should we be saying, if you don't, we will be following that policy, not that we just let it go on and on and on.
Well,
Because that seems to be what
It-
happens
it-
some of the time.
yeah, it's a good point, but as you know, we've worked long and hard to get us to progress our enforcement actions, and we're now getting some traction with that, but that's taken quite a long time to actually push that. Right,
It's a question.
yeah, that's fair point. Okay, right, I'm gonna move us on. A lot of good debate, so thank you, everybody.
Can I just clarify as part of the resolution that we're leaving it as it is? That the issues and options be approved for consultation. I mean, obviously,
Well, we there's so many changes in it.
Yeah.
I think we need to come back. So it's. I would say we need to review it again before we actually go out. It would be my view, because there's that many changes in it.
Can I just say though, is that meaning by the LDF coming back and meeting? Because if it is, then that means that we need to prepare the paper and then it needs to be
5
publicised.
days.
So that's at least another 2 to 3 weeks before we're going to have another LDF meeting.
What people's thoughts. Personally, I'm happy to meet again because I think it's such an important document that we've got to get right.
Would there be time to make changes at that meeting? Because we're quite very close to.
Yeah, that's Simpson.
I'm just wondering, Sharon, what the options are, because whilst I think we've all talked about the changes we'd like to see, and I'm sure we'd like to see what they are, to have to publicise another meeting of itself, you know, can create a lot of delays. Given that, if you like, we are drawn from executives, isn't there an executive meeting coming up soon?
Yeah, today.
So
There's one on the 24th, but the papers would have been made public last Friday. So this would not be on the agenda for that meeting,
but the
and it will
chairman,
not be in the public domain before then.
but the chairman could agree
And make exceptions.
to bring an emergency item onto that, particularly as all he'd be doing essentially is accepting the changes that members have already talked about, not actually making new decisions, just looking at how it's documented.
Means.
So, sorry, just to work that backwards then. The board meeting's on Monday evening, so the changes would need to be made in the next, day. And they need to all be agreed by yourselves before it goes to exec board. Because that's essentially what you're saying there.
That is enough time to do it.
No, I'm not sure that is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that, if you like, it could be that officers draft the changes, that could be circulated to all of us by email. We'll have the opportunity to look at them. And, you know, not that I'm putting words into his mouth, but maybe the chairman of the executive board could agree to take an emergency item and have it tabled at the meeting with the changes highlighted in the report. I
But
don't
would we still have, I'm not sure we'll still have time enough to get the changes made, get it out to the LDF subcommittee for us to have a chance to read through it again and review.
Then an alternative, chairman, would be that you, that we agree it subject to the changes being made, subject to you, councillor Phillips, who I think is, are you chairman, councillor Phillips? I'm struggling to remember who it is. So councillor Phillips.
handsome one.
He laughed then.
Councillor Ridley agreeing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
all I'm trying to do is, look, I do want to
So-
make the changes, I do want to change the document, but I don't necessarily want to build in the
Okay.
delay of it coming.
So the recommendation stands based on the changes being made, circulated via email, reviewed and agreed by chair, vice chair and spokesperson.
For all of the other parties.
Yeah. And is everybody happy with that? Because I don't want to, I know we've got a little bit of time in the consultation process, but I don't want to delay it to a point whereby we're into end of Jan or February.
I am just a little concerned that there is an exec board, an extraordinary full council after exec board.
There is,
So whether that would affect timings of this going back to that.
was that, it won't need to go back to exec board then if we do that. So
So
if
we're
we,
not- we're
if
not
we
going
approved
back to
it
exec.
at this meeting based on, if the rest of the committee's happy,
Okay.
that the changes will be made, they'll be reviewed, they'll be sent round to the whole committee for comment. And then we'll tidy it up and then chair, vice chair and spokesperson will then review it.
I'm happy to propose that, Chairman, but within that, will the next executive board be having the minutes of this meeting?
Before council hearing.
No, the
Won't be the
councils, it's
emergency
just standalone, it won't
Oh,
have.
they won't, no.
No.
So
If Councillor Osborne, the other,
basically, we are just delegating that decision
but you'll get to see
to
it.
the forum.
But you
We
won't
will
get to see it,
be
yes.
Seeing it, but
Yes.
then you will be taking the decision.
Yes.
to be-
If the board, if the committee is happy with that, yes. Everyone happy? Have a proposer for that? Councillor Simpson, seconder. Councillor Ridley, all those in favour? It's carried. Okay, right. Agenda item 7 is a local development scheme.
Move the recommendation, can you?
You haven't got on the chance here.
Oh, no, it's just, we've done it a dozen times before, haven't we? This is an
We have,
update on
yes.
what we've seen before.
Okay, I've got a movement, unless there's any comments, seconded by Councillor Phillips, all those in favour? That's carried. Thank you all very much.
Hang on, no,
No.
Oh, God.
Are you wanting to go?
No,
Chairman?
I missed it. I had two little blue sticky things. Right, so Birmingham local planning, the focus preferred options regulation 18 consultation. And the recommendation is that the preferred options consultation is noted and that the comments set out in the report together with the additional member comments be submitted as the council's response to the focus preferred options. Are there any comments on the Birmingham plan?
I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
That means there's no comments there.
Well, when is the deadline, Chairman? When do we have to get back to Birmingham Board?
You need to respond by.
December the 24th,
Yeah.
the 4th.
Fourth of December. 4th of December, yeah, so consultation 23rd of October to 4th of December.
Yeah, can we just, in our response, reference the bit that actually says we note the comment and appreciate the comment that you have sufficient supply for approximately 99,000 dwellings and you're, using the standard methodology, you're looking for 85747, so therefore you can meet your own needs over the planned period.
It's a good
And
shout.
I think we referenced that when we
Yeah,
comment back.
I think that's a really good shout actually, because it reinforces that messaging of
Thank you. We're happy for your plan. We acknowledge you don't need us. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Well done, crack on.
Cheers for that.
Do you want to send them a box of chocolates as well?
Yes.
Seal the deal?
I think it's commenting on our.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Doc, Mike, have you got that? Yeah. something like-
I agree entirely with that, but could we just say that, look, if any members of the authority have any additional comments within the next, they can be sent to the officers and they will be rated as appropriate.
Or because we're acknowledging it doesn't mean that we're gonna, if they start doing anything,
Oh, yeah.
saying, you know, so.
Yeah, effectively, we literally do exactly, we actually note, yeah, just noting it, acknowledging it.
So if we kick out football over there, we do expect it back, you know.
Yes, okay, right.
Never mind,
Do I have a post for that, councillor Simpson? Can I have a seconder for that, please? You can't second it as well, councillor Simpson. Councillor Simmons, thank you.
Sorry, for the benefit of the minutes, and I've just checked that we've got that, but it's subject to any additional comments that can be forwarded to officers that can be included within the response.
Yeah, and picking up on councillor Simmons' comment to go in there as well. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Does that include the box of chocolates?
It's not true.
They're promoting specifically. Just very quickly, I had Dr. You've given us the consultation dates. Is this going to be slipped now? Is it?
No, there's a
Now
change.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Apologies, it was a long one, but I think well worth time and effort.